This is the state of things from the American Tobacco Historic District. I'm Frank Stasio. They're called forever chemicals. That's because they accumulate in the environment and the human body, and they're dangerous. And they're showing up in water samples on the Cape Fear River Basin, which includes most of central and eastern North Carolina. The North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality required 25 sewage treatment plants in the state to test for the substances from July through September of last year. Greg Barnes is with us to talk about what they found. He's environmental health reporter for North Carolina Health News. Welcome, Greg.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Tell me a little bit more about this monitoring program by the Department of Environmental Health. What were they looking for?
Essentially, they were looking in the sewer treatment plants for any PFAS and 1,4-dioxane that were leaving the plants.
And remind us what PFAS are.
PFAS there are 5,000 different types of PFAS. The two of the oldest are called PFOA and PFOS. Those have federal health advisories of 70 parts per trillion over a lifetime of exposure. The others are much less known, but they also have potential health effects and are being studied more thoroughly.
So tell us what they found.
They found in Sanford, they found PFAS measuring over 4,000 parts per trillion, which is a huge amount according to researchers. And in Burlington, they found over almost 2,300 parts per trillion of PFAS. And all of the other 25 that they checked, almost all of the other ones had some level of PFAS, a lot of them measuring over 100 parts per trillion. So pretty significant problem.
Well, yeah, because for perspective, you wrote about a national study that looked at levels of PFAS in 31 different states. And what was the highest level they found in that study?
The highest level they found was in Brunswick County at 106 parts per trillion. And that was at an elementary school. They started putting bottled water into the school, and I'm not so sure they're doing that now. I saw something that said they weren't. I also looked at Fayetteville's drinking water, and in September, that measured 244 parts per trillion. So that's even higher than Burlington.
Right, and that's far less than the thousands that they were finding in this latest study from water treatment plants, right?
But again, yes, in the water treatment plants, not in drinking water.
Not in drinking water.
You got to make that.
Well, you make the distinction, but it's an interesting one. That's PFAS still in the water after it's been treated, right?
Right. Wastewater treatment plants can't get rid of, at least most of them can't get rid of PFAS or 1,4-dioxane. So it flows from there, and it goes down into down the river basin, Cape Fear River and the Haw River and the Deep River, and it goes into the water intakes of these other municipalities along the way.
Right. So what kind of impact now can these chemicals have on human health?
PFOA and PFOS, again, those are the two that are studied most, and they have been linked to liver and kidney cancer, to thyroid disease, to ulcerative colitis, to low birth weight. The list goes on, and there seems to be more findings of problems all the time.
And these chemicals are being discharged into the Cape Fear River Basin, so give us a sense of what that encompasses.
The basin pretty much starts around Reedsville, and so you have the Haw River going through there. The Haw River goes into Lake Jordan, the southern end of Lake Jordan, and then it goes down to the Cape Fear River, and the Cape Fear River flows all the way to the coast.
You talked about the especially high levels in the Sanford area, and that's unique because actually the drinking water plant is below the wastewater treatment plant, right?
Right. So that was a concern. I don't know if I think they think that was kind of a one-time deal, that some industry somewhere had released this very large amount of PFAS. So they're not sure where it's coming from. And that's what the monitoring program that DEQ is doing, is trying to find out.
Where it's coming from. Do they have any guesses about why these elevated levels were found in this treated wastewater?
At this point, they can always say, PFAS are man-made, so more than likely is coming from industry. There's also PFAS can also be found in sewer sludge that they place on farm fields.
So what do we do? What are the implications here? Because you make the distinction. This monitoring test was done over that period of time. What was the period of time?
The monitoring was done July through September.
All right, and so, but you're monitoring wastewater treatment, which is treated differently than our drinking water. So the question is, right. Are we safer? Can our drinking water treatment plants, that filtering, does that get rid of PFAS?
Essentially, no. There are some plants that can get rid of PFAS and 1,4-dioxane, and not completely either. So basically, no. Wilmington is about to spend $46 million on a granular activated carbon system that would get rid of most of it. I think Pittsburgh is considering doing the same thing. So it can be done, but it's very expensive, and some of these plants just don't have that capability.
So, and the monitoring is interesting. I mean, we're talking about wastewater plants in the Cape Fear Basin. Why not monitor the water that we drink? I mean, why, or are we doing that all the time anyway?
Some do. Again, I think Fayetteville has been monitoring since 2017. Greensboro and Reedsville and I think Asheville have been required to monitor for at least 1,4-dioxane since 2017. So, there's some work. DEQ is doing some work to keep an eye on what's happening out there.
What kind of regulation do we have at the federal and state level over these substances?
Only PFOA and PFOS are federally regulated. There's no regulations. They're all unregulated, but PFOA and PFOS, the two legacy compounds, they have an advisory level of 70 parts per trillion, either in combination or by themselves.
We're talking about elevated levels of PFAS found in waterways in the Cape Fear River Basin. Talking about that today on The State of Things. Greg Barnes is my guest. He is the environmental health reporter for North Carolina Health News. So I mean, we're in this kind of gray area, right? We know that there are some health-related implications for some of these compounds, not all. Regulations seem vague. What is there any enforcement? What kind of enforcement is happening right now?
The only enforcement I know of, back in October, I wrote a story finding 1,4-dioxane, high level of 1,4-dioxane leaving Greensboro's wastewater treatment plant. And that got into Pittsburgh's drinking water at a very high level. And afterwards, I asked them, okay, who's responsible for this? And DEQ said they didn't know. Greensboro wouldn't tell me, citing privacy laws. And the next day, DEQ identified the company as being Shamrock Environmental out of Greensboro. So a month later, DEQ gave a notice of violation to both Greensboro and Reedsville for not notifying people downstream of these releases. So that's the only enforcement that I know of.
Now, DEQ has asked 19 industries to monitor these chemicals over a period of 3 months, right? Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, and that monitoring just ended January 31st. So these companies were asked to do this. They can't be required to do it, but they were asked to do it, and so I'm hoping to when those become available, when those data become available, I hope to find out exactly what's going on with those industries.
And then in a related story, on Friday of last week, NC State researchers announced a study in which they found high levels of forever chemicals in striped bass caught in the Cape Fear River, levels more than 40 times higher than farm-raised bass. Are these data points now starting to add up? Let's talk about what consumers and what should we do as we look at these data points that maybe have not all been tied together yet.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much so much binding in all of this that it's very concerning. I know back last summer I asked Detlef Kanapi, the NC State researcher, what he would recommend for people in Pittsburgh, and he said, well, I wouldn't drink that water without reverse osmosis under sink filter system. And then I asked McNolan, Fayetteville's drinking water director, and he wasn't quite as concerned. He said, I only use mine tap water for making coffee and very little other things, so I'm not too concerned. When I saw the 244 parts per trillion for Fayetteville's water system, I went, wow, I got to start looking. So I went on Amazon and found a reverse osmosis system for about $200 that I'm seriously considering about buying.
Obviously, you live in Fayetteville.
Yes.
Greg Barnes, environmental health reporter for North Carolina Health News. Thanks for your reporting, Greg.
Thank you.
You can find links at our website, stateofthings.org.
Context of White Supremacy. Gus T. Renegade in for another broadcast, hopefully to share constructive information on the system of white supremacy. Today's date, Thursday, February 20, 2020, so I have been told. This is our Thursday book club. We are reading Harriet A. Washington's A Terrible Thing to Waste, Environmental Racism and the Assault on the American Mind. Sadly, this is our last segment on Miss Washington's text. Not super long. I think medical apartheid was a tad longer, but good information coming through for the last section. She'll have more suggestions, things that we can do to try to take good care of ourselves in a system saturated with toxins, poisons, deliberately. We're picking up on the subsection Food and Nutrition Provide a Poison-Free Start. This is in Chapter 6. Subsection again is Food and Nutrition Provide a Poison-Free Start. The audio segment that we heard at the beginning, talking about the toxins, pollutions down in North Carolina, I thought it was fitting because that's where we ended at the subsection last week. She was talking about toxins in the water. She talked about different water filters and getting an independent rating for the water filter system, doing some research, checking online, going to the library or what have you, doing some research and figuring out, according to your budget, testing your water. We talked about that last week. Invest $10, $8, whatever it is, in getting some water test strips. Test your water, see what you're working with, and then see about, a filter system. But I thought that was appropriate because that's what they were talking about there with the massive pollutants, all kinds, down in North Carolina. But we'll go ahead and get started. Last time, Harriet A. Washington, A Terrible Thing to Waste. Context of White Supremacy, audio segment number 1.
Food and Nutrition Provide a Poison-Free Start. As described in Chapter 4, getting safe, adequate nutrition while avoiding brain-draining contaminants like mercury is especially challenging for pregnant women, but it can be done. Multivitamins, you and your baby need. This is what you should take. Although you should also ask whether to take additional folic acid to prevent neural tube problems and choline supplements to prevent alcohol from damaging your baby's brain. You should also consider adding fish or other sources of omega-3 oil to your diet. If your doctor agrees, 2 6-ounce servings of low-mercury fish weekly, refer to Seafood Safety coming up, will boost brain health for you and your unborn baby. Breastfeeding. Consider breastfeeding, which, as explained in Chapter 4, conveys many benefits for a child's brain as well as body. But if you live in a fence-line community or other toxics-ridden area, Be sure to ask your doctor specifically about whether you should change your diet or whether it is safe to breastfeed at all, because some poisons can taint breast milk. In addition to your pediatrician, organizations like La Leche League International can advise you about breastfeeding. Breastfeeding confers so many advantages to a baby's physical health and mental acuity that it is sometimes advisable even if a poison can enter breast milk. In Chapter 4, I explained that the future IQ of breastfed babies was higher than normal despite the effects of the mercury in their breast milk. In 1993, breastfeeding researchers followed the cognitive development of breastfed children and reported in early human development that even though they received more contaminants through breast milk than bottle-fed children, the breastfed scored significantly higher on the Bailey and McCarthy mental and psychomotor development tests at all time points from 2 years through 5 years, and had higher English grades on report cards from grade 3 or higher. Alcohol. To protect any future offspring from alcohol-caused brain damage, it is safest to abstain from alcohol completely if you could become pregnant, especially in light of the rate of underdiagnosed fetal alcohol brain damage in African American, First Nations, and Hispanic infants. Recent studies have questioned the purported health benefits of a daily serving of alcohol, and many experts now think that abstaining may be healthier than moderate consumption. But if you choose to drink, no more than a single daily serving is best, and daily serving is the key. Decades of studies show that this is not the same thing as 7 drinks on Saturday night. If there is a possibility you could become pregnant, ask your doctor whether she advises avoiding alcohol completely or whether limiting yourself to a single drink daily is sufficient. Baby food. As Chapter 4 revealed, many baby food products, even organic ones, test positive for lead and arsenic, including 80% of infant formulas. And that's not the only brain-damaging contaminant they may contain. Consider making your own baby food. If you buy commercial baby food, research it first to see what brands and types are safest. The Clean Label Project, which is supported by grants, donations, and its certification program, is a good resource. Fruits and vegetables. Wash and peel fruits and vegetables to minimize pesticide residue that can bioaccumulate and cause cognition problems in children. Processed foods. Worried that the chemicals listed on a label could compromise your children's brain development? Choose minimally processed foods to avoid adulterants that could affect your family's health, and avoid overprocessed food. Using minimally processed foods also allows you to control the ingredients of the food you prepare. Preservatives. Avoid most preservatives. This is trickier than it sounds, because not every preservative is harmful. Some preservatives are necessary to protect your health by keeping microbes at bay. For example, buying peanut butter without any preservatives can be risky because harmful molds called aflatoxins that can cause liver cancer and delayed development in children can grow in peanut butter. But preservative chemicals can cause health problems, so the wisest course is to use as many unprocessed foods as possible, and therefore avoid the need for many preservatives. It is also good to understand what the common preservatives are and whether they can pose hazards. To do this, you don't have to become a chemist, but you do have to know where to look for information. Your doctor may be able to help or to recommend a nutritionist or dietitian who can help. The habit of reading food labels is a good one to adopt, because all preservatives added to food must be declared on the label's ingredients list. The government labels many food preservatives GRAS, which means generally recognized as safe. It reasons that these chemicals have been used and monitored for long periods without serious concerns arising. But GRAS also means that they have not been specifically tested for human safety. So it is impossible to be sure they are safe, and especially whether they are safe for mental development. which the chemicals are not typically monitored for. Here is a list of common grass preservatives and their purposes. Antimicrobial agents. These kill bacteria and stop the growth of mold on foods. Antioxidants. These prevent the oxidation or spoilage of food and offer health benefits by reducing harmful free radicals in the body. Benzoates. The salts of benzoic acid. Butylated hydroxyanisole, BHA. A waxy solid used to preserve butter, lard, meats, and other foods, linked to some cancers. Butylated hydroxytoluene, BHT. Similar in structure and function to BHA, but in powder form, linked to some cancers. Chelating agents. These prevent spoilage by bonding with the metal ions in certain foods. Citric acid, found naturally in citrus fruits. Disodium ethylene diamine tetraacetic acid, EDTA, used in food processing to bind manganese, cobalt, iron, or copper ions. Nitrates, the salts of nitrous acid. Polyphosphates, used as anti-browning agents in dips and washes for peeled fruits and vegetables. Propionates, the salts of propionic acid. Sorbates, sorbic acid and its 3 mineral salts, potassium sorbate, calcium sorbate, and sodium sorbate. Sulfites, a group of compounds containing charged molecules of sulfur compounded with oxygen, including sodium sulfite, sodium bisulfite, sodium metabisulfite, potassium bisulfite, and potassium metabisulfite. Vitamin C, ascorbic acid, a water-soluble vitamin and its salts, sodium ascorbate, calcium ascorbate, and potassium ascorbate. Vitamin E, tocopherol, a fat-soluble vitamin. Although they are on the GRAS list, questions have been raised about the safety of BHA and BHT, which have been linked to cancer. Sodium nitrate and nitrate, often used to preserve meats like bacon and sausage, are strongly suspected of causing cancer and should be avoided. So should cadmium. Although it is on the GRAS list, it is also a toxic chemical. Home canning. Canning, also called preserving or putting up food, is an economical way to preserve large quantities of garden fare and meats for storage by packing them into glass jars. When done correctly, this allows you to avoid both spoilage and artificial preservatives. Canning got many of our forebears through harsh winters and other times of scarcity. But canning must be performed meticulously in order to avoid spoilage and fatal food poisoning. It is very dangerous if not performed correctly. While working in a poison center, I learned that most cases of the fatal food poisoning botulism arose from eating not restaurant or supermarket foods, but improperly processed home-canned fare. Normal cooking temperatures do not kill botulism or denature its toxin, so canned foods that harbor it are deadly. A mere drop of tainted food can kill. Botulism is not self-limited like many other types of food poisoning, and it can kill quickly. Even if a person is rushed to the hospital and given the antidote, botulism antitoxin, they cannot always be saved, especially if too much time has elapsed, and the antitoxin cannot undo damage that has already been done. Because botulism is fatal, don't take chances. Don't trust the canning instructions in recipes and cookbooks, because they are not always sufficient to prevent botulism. Unless you are willing to commit to purchasing the right equipment and following the U.S. Department of Agriculture, USDA, instructions exactly, find another way to save money and avoid preservatives in foods. You can order the USDA Complete Guide to Home Canning by calling 1-888-398-4636 or download it from their website. For more advice, contact your state or county extension service, which you can locate by searching for home canning on the CDC website. If you are unsure whether a food, either home-canned or commercially purchased, is safe, don't take chances. Discard it. Better to lose a few dollars than a life. And don't taste test it. It takes only a drop of botulism-tainted food to kill. If you have already eaten food and have concerns about its safety, call your local poison center. You should tape the number to your home's telephone or refrigerator, especially if you have children. If you don't know it, call the National Poison Control Center, which can be reached at 1-800-222-1222. It is always open, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. Seafood safety. Seafood is a common source of food poisoning, partly because it must be carefully prepared and stored to prevent microbial growth that can send a victim to bed or the bathroom for hours of unpleasant symptoms. But worse, as I discuss in Chapter 5, a few types of seafood poisoning seriously harm the brain, causing permanent short-term memory loss, confusion, and even death. If you fish, avoid such brain-threatening illness by paying close attention to red tide warnings in the newspapers, online, or by calling your local extension service, which you can find at pickyourown.org's website. You can also go to the National Ocean Service's website and search for red tide. To avoid mercury poisoning, limit yourself to 2 or 3 servings of fish a week. Choose smaller fish of these types. Light tuna. Avoid white albacore tuna, which has a higher mercury content. Salmon, tilapia, pollock, catfish, shrimp, and mackerel. Pick smaller mackerel fish, which have lower concentrations of mercury. Avoid shark, swordfish, king mackerel, and tilefish, which the FDA lists as having the highest levels of mercury. Avoid eating whale and dolphin at all costs. Their mercury levels are extraordinarily high. Dollar store fare. Buying food in dollar stores is an easy way to save money, unless your purchase is tainted by toxins, heavy metals, or other poisons that harm the brain. Be especially wary of imported candies and tinned meats. Lead and microbes can leach into them from their containers, and these dangers won't be acknowledged on the label. Imported pottery, too, can have high levels of lead. Such purchases might be better obtained from discount outlets that carry U.S. regulated goods. Join with friends and neighbors to buy economically in bulk at a big box store instead, where you are less likely to encounter unregulated foreign fare. Iodized salt. Because iodine deficiency remains the greatest global cause of mental retardation, buy only iodized salt, and avoid sea salt unless it is infused with iodine, because processing removes its natural iodine. If you adopt a low-salt diet for health reasons, ask your doctor to recommend alternative sources of iodine. Some European salt and Himalayan salt contains fluoride, additional amounts of which should be avoided by pregnant women and very small children. Water in the United States is already fluoridated, and more than 50 studies suggest that additional fluoride may cause an IQ drop in the very young. Supplements. Both the World Health Organization, WHO, and the United States Dietary Supplements Health and Education Act, DSHEA, of 1994, define dietary supplements as products other than tobacco that supplement the diet, such as vitamins, minerals, herbs, botanical products, and amino acids. In addition to iodine, some nutritional supplements and vitamins are known to improve cognition. Some can also improve the cognition of unborn children when taken by their mothers. Folic acid prevents neural malformations like spina bifida. Vitamin D prevents bone disorders and a slew of other conditions, and it is especially important for dark-skinned people, who are more likely than others to suffer a vitamin D deficiency. Evidence suggests that other supplements are worth investing in. Choline may help to prevent both fetal alcohol disorders and Alzheimer's disease, for example. If you are one of the 16% of Americans who use both alternative therapies and conventional medicine, you must involve your doctor. In 1993, David Eisenberg published a study in the New England Journal of Medicine that was later confirmed by his subsequent studies, revealing that most, 3 of every 4 people, who use alternative medicine hide this fact from their doctors. For the sake of your and your family's health, don't be one of them. Some herbs and supplements that don't harm adults can devastate an unborn child's brain. Moreover, if your doctor doesn't know what you are taking, her prescriptions and recommendations may be working at cross purposes with the alternative agents, robbing them of their potency. Or your alternative treatments and your doctor's prescriptions may potentiate each other, dangerously heightening the effect of your medications. If your doctor absolutely rejects the use of alternative medicine and refuses to advise you about it, consider finding a doctor who is more alternative-friendly. It is true that we would be better off if we could obtain all our needed vitamins from food rather than from reality. Some supplements contain lead or even prescription medications that are not listed on the ingredients label. Also, the people who distribute and sell them can be dangerously naive about pharmacology, which has caused some serious injuries when the wrong configuration of a nutritional chemical was sold. The clerk in the health food store who persuades you that a supplement will help alleviate your child's lead poisoning symptoms cannot help you if it sends your child to the hospital instead. Here are just a few of the most common supplements that have caused problems after being sold with medical claims. Many are sold under several names, and this list is far from exhaustive, so the fact that a product does not appear here does not mean it is safe. Aconite is traditionally known as wolfsbane, and it is derived from a genus of plants that have long been used to address inflammation, joint pain, or gout. But aconite can also harbor poisonous chemicals. In fact, it is responsible for most cases of severe herbal poisoning in Hong Kong. Caffeine powder addresses weight loss, increased energy, and athletic performance, but it is dangerously potent. 1 teaspoon equals 28 cups of coffee, according to the FDA, which has banned some brands after 2 users died from caffeine overdose in 2014. A safe dose for most adults is 200 milligrams, or 1/16 of a teaspoon. Chaparral is made from a California shrub and addresses weight loss, inflammation, colds, rashes, and infections, but is harmful to the liver and can cause hepatitis. Coltsfoot is an herb that addresses coughs, sore throats, laryngitis, and asthma. But it contains alkaloids that cause tumors and was banned by the German government after an infant died because her mother had consumed coltsfoot tea during pregnancy. The ban was amended to allow the sale of a variety developed without any alkaloids. Comfrey is an herb used to alleviate heavy periods, stomach problems, and chest pain, but it was banned for internal use in the United States because it causes liver damage and is unsafe for use by pregnant women. Germander is used for weight loss, fever, arthritis, gout, heart failure, and stomach problems, but it also causes liver damage when used often. More than 45 people were sickened by it in France, and 1 died. Greater celandine, a member of the poppy family, is used to treat stomach aches, pain, and cancer, but it is toxic even at moderate doses and can cause fainting, convulsions, and paralysis. Green tea extract powder addresses weight loss, but it can also dangerously elevate heart rate and blood pressure and injure the liver. Kava reduces anxiety, but also raises the risks of Parkinson's disease and, paradoxically, of depression. Lobelia addresses respiratory problems and is used as a smoking cessation aid, but the risks of nausea, diarrhea, rapid heartbeat, seizures, coma, and possibly death make it too dangerous to use. Ma Huang, also known as ephedra or Mormon tea, has caused seizures, psychosis, myocardial infarction, cardiac arrhythmia, stroke, and death when given in high doses or for long periods. It has been used as a stimulant to enhance athletic performance, but the FDA banned it from supplements in 2004 after several athletes' deaths were linked to it. Methylphenephrine is a stimulant favored by those who want to increase energy, lose weight, and gain greater athletic stamina. But these come with the risks of heart rhythm abnormalities that can lead to cardiac arrest. Pennyroyal oil alleviates breathing problems and aids digestion, but it is also tied to nerve damage, convulsions, and liver damage. Red yeast rice is used to help lower high cholesterol and prevent heart disease, but it is tied to hair loss, and it can dangerously increase the effect of cholesterol-lowering statin drugs. Yohimbe is taken for everything from depression and weight control to erectile dysfunction, but it raises blood pressure, causes seizures and liver damage problems, and may cause panic attacks. Natural is not a synonym for safe. Alternative supplements, teas, and other nostrums are often embraced by people who believe that they are natural and therefore safer than a pill or medicine that has been artificially derived in a laboratory and manufactured in a factory. But this is an illusion. You don't have to spend much time in a poison center or even in the wild to realize that remedies found in nature, like nature herself, can be extremely powerful and even deadly. Herbs and supplements can sicken and kill, especially when used or prepared inappropriately, in excessive dosages, or for a prolonged period of time. But even a Russian mushroom expert died while visiting a Syracuse, New York college after consuming a poisonous substance in soil quality, growing season, method of preparation, and even geographic location all cause large differences in a given medicinal plant's potency, making it were adulterated with pharmaceuticals. A parallel California study found that 7% contained undeclared pharmaceuticals. Avoid heavy metals. I've discussed the dangers of small doses of methylmercury, such as those derived from fish in the diet, that can have devastating. The preservative and autism was recalled, with its author discredited and struck off the British medical roll. Many fear that thimerosal or even the vaccines themselves may cause autism in their children. A thorough discussion of this issue would require far too much space to engage in here. But thimerosal has been removed from all but a very small handful of vaccines and is not currently used in any that are given to children. It poses no autism risk. Mercury in batteries. Another common source of mercury is in the small, round, flat batteries, many the size of a penny or smaller, in devices like watches and hearing aids. Children and toddlers sometimes eat them, but so do adults. Some people accidentally ingest a watch battery while holding it in their mouth while changing the batteries. Don't do this. Older adults, especially those suffering from eyesight problems or dementia, may mistake them for pills. Unfortunately, the ingestion sometimes is not discovered until symptoms set in and the victim begins vomiting, drooling, retching, and suffering from abdominal pains, rashes, dark stools, irritability, and fever. This is a medical emergency. Send the person to the hospital immediately. Do not wait and see. Bring the device that originally contained the battery so hospital staff can determine exactly what type of battery was consumed. Do not give the victim Ipecac, salt solution, or anything else to induce vomiting. This can worsen the damage, possibly forcing a battery that has entered the stomach to become lodged in the esophagus where it can impede breathing. There is also a battery ingestion hotline at 202-625-3333, which you can call if you need immediate help or if circumstances prevent you from taking the person to get professional medical help. But do not call the hotline instead of taking the person to the hospital immediately. At the hospital, staff may wait and watch the progress of the battery through the system. They may retrieve it with the aid of an endoscope. Or they may administer medication such as dimercaptosuccinic acid, DMSA, or dimercaptopropane sulfonate, DMPS, and acetylpenicillamine. To prevent such exposures, securely tape the battery compartments on children's toys and electronics shut. Store batteries in child-proof containers if you have young children in the house, and lock them away if you have elderly people living with you. They can so easily mistake the batteries for pills. Mercury amalgams. Many people worry that dental fillings made of an amalgam that can contain as much as 50% mercury may poison them or their children. Scientific reports on their safety vary. However, such studies have shown that the mercury in fillings may cross the placental barrier to harm an unborn child. Unfortunately, removing these fillings carries risks as well, exposing both the patient and the dentist to mercury vapor. In fact, some experts think that the dental workers are at higher risk from such fillings than patients. Research on the question continues, so ask your dentist for guidance and possible answers. Workers besides those in the dental industry risk mercury exposure too, especially those employed in coal-burning industries and in gold mining. In ancient Rome, criminals sentenced to work in quicksilver mines had a short life expectancy because of the toxicity of the mercury in the cinnabar they mined. Some laboratory workers today risk exposure to the very dangerous compound dimethylmercury, which is so toxic that a drop spilled on the skin, even on a gloved hand, has caused death. Some governments have heavily regulated the use of mercury. The European Union, which has historically exported but not imported large amounts of mercury, has prohibited the export of mercury since March 2011. One stated reason is that, although poisoning is uncommon in the EU, it is a problem in native Arctic communities, China, India, and in many developing countries. Lead. If you and your family are exposed to lead via tainted water, food, peeling indoor lead-based paint and dust, soil, or industrial emissions in your neighborhood, any effective, permanent solution must come from regulatory changes imposed upon the responsible industry or municipal government. But you are not powerless. You can take steps on your own, and banding together with neighbors and advocates will offer some further protection and hasten governmental responsibility. To protect your child, first find out what year your housing or your child's daycare or school was built. If it was built after 1978, that's good news, because federal law has prohibited the use of lead-based interior paint in homes since that year. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention also have recommendations. Children don't spend all their time at home, so be sure to tell babysitters, grandparents, and other caregivers not to allow your children near peeling paint, window jambs, or chewable surfaces painted with lead-based paint. If your home was built before 1978, have it tested for lead. If the test is positive, move if at all possible. If you cannot move, consider Board City Department of Housing Preservation and Development, HPD, will respond. To see what similar laws may apply in your community, contact your municipal housing department or the state EPA. To find information about laws, resources, and how to make complaints almost anywhere else in the nation, except tribal reservations, go to the EPA's website. For tribal matters, look for the Environmental Protection in Indian Country at the EPA's website. Some cities provide an online database of lead-imbued housing that prospective renters can check. In the case of Baltimore, the Maryland Department of the Environment database, at the Maryland government's website, informs you whether a listed property is free of hazards like peeling, flaking lead paint, and lead dust. Its website also details the state laws pertaining to lead poisoning and a section that explains how to file a complaint. New York State maintains a similar site. Caregivers should regularly wash children's hands and toys and monitor children as closely as possible to minimize their putting things in their mouths that may carry lead dust. They should also wet mop floors and windowsills frequently. These are only partial, temporary measures. Nothing fully protects your home's occupants except full abatement of lead by a professional. They are economical, but their complexity makes many brands difficult to use accurately. In some models, colors indicate the result, so that some do not work if you are colorblind. Instead, consult your health department to conduct a test for lead in your home. Or find an EPA-certified lead testing professional. Must be tested, registered, and carry a label approved by the EPA. Despite the agricultural community's regular use of pesticides, homeowners are the #1 users. Pests take many forms besides insects. Categories of pesticides include algicides, including some pool chemicals, fungicides, miticides, larvicides, and more, germicides, bathroom disinfectants, herbicides, plant defoliants and desiccants, insecticides, insect attractants and repellents, flea collars for pets, mildewcides, contained in some cleaning products, rodenticides, rat and mouse killers. Understand the label warnings. Caution identifies the pesticides that are slightly toxic, the least harmful. Warning tells you it is more poisonous than a pesticide with a caution label, but still carries moderate toxicity. Don't assume that products lacking the skull and crossbones logo are non-poisonous. Danger, or poison on the label, indicates that the pesticide is very poisonous, highly irritating, or toxic. Handle and store them carefully, following the label directions concerning safety equipment and protection gear. Call your poison center for instructions if anyone is exposed by oral, inhalation, or skin contact. Do not give Ipecac or anything else to induce vomiting unless instructed to do so by your doctor or a poison center employee. Make safe household purchases. From children's toys and furniture covered in illegal lead paint, to water filters that leach lead, to recalled household items that still appear on store shelves, checking the saferproducts.gov website is a fast, reliable way to protect your family from hazardous or recalled items with a simple search. The site, managed by the Federal Consumer Protection Safety Commission, also allows you to report hazardous items. Even after following all this advice, your power to mitigate the harmful effects of environmental poisons is limited. Real safety for you, your family, and your community lies in ending, not moderating, toxic exposure. And this is a goal that requires joint effort. The next chapter shows how to organize your community against polluters. Chapter 7. A Wonderful Thing to Save. How communities can unite to preserve brain power. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. Margaret Mead. Even without significant wealth or political clout, communities of color acting jointly have begun to transform the environment and health of marginalized people assailed by invisible poisoning. Consider that the first sweeping demands for environmental justice were ignited by groups like the middle-class residents of nondescript Afton in North Carolina. On a hot day in mid-August, throngs of North Carolinians from this predominantly African-American town and surrounding Warren County hoisted signs and banners as they chanted and sang stanzas of "Ain't No Stopping Us Now," "We Shall Not Be Moved," and other familiar hymns of the civil rights movement. white supporters brandishing signs and fists swelled their ranks, and formations of chanting neighborhood children filled the roads, hoisting placards and banners. The marchers had gathered to defy a state convoy of trucks. As the protesters vowed to halt the vehicle's incursion, armed, helmeted police responded by aiming weapons as the sheriff took up his microphone to invoke law and order. He warned that if they did not disperse, the assembly would be arrested. As the first resistor was dragged, passively limp, into a police van, others lay in front of the trucks. As they were cuffed and led away, one by one, the chants and songs continued into the night. The placards, the shouted demands, the playlist of venerated civil rights hymns, the armed police, and the arrests presented a drama familiar to Americans. Throughout the 1960s, we absorbed such spectacles nightly with our dinners on the 6 o'clock news. Not only the human rights passion play, but also the demographics were those of an iconic Southern civil rights protest, in which the black and disenfranchised ascended a moral high ground in the face of state force. 7 of every 10 Warren County citizens are black, and 1 of every 5 is poor. But although most residents were middle class, they wielded little political power. However, thanks to their collective action, Afton's protests assumed a grander scale than most. National television cameras transmitted a seemingly endless stream of protesters and arrests that continued for 6 weeks. During that time, 550 people were arrested, giving rise to what the Duke Chronicle called the largest Southern civil disobedience since Martin Luther King Jr. had marched through Alabama. Birth of a movement. But Dr. King was long dead. The Afton protests took place not in 1965, but in 1982. And the participants were not resisting voting disenfranchisement, unequal education, or racial segregation. They were fighting the trucking of PCBs, polychlorinated biphenyls, into a landfill sited in their neighborhood. Since the 1920s, PCBs have been valuable in industry because they are resistant to acids, bases, and heat, which makes them useful as insulation in electrical equipment, such as transformers, devices that use induction to transfer electrical energy between circuits, and capacitors, electrical components that store potential energy in an electric field, as well as lubricants. Although their toxic effects led to their U.S. manufacture being banned in 1979, PCBs from other countries and those that persist in the environment still pose a threat to Americans. They linger in many other products and applications, from flame retardants to paints, coatings, adhesives, and inks. Marchers' shouts demanded, and their placards read, "No PCB," "Landfills kill," and "We care about our future. Don't harm generations to come." After the victories of the civil rights movement, including the end of de jure racial segregation, African American residents of neglected communities took aim at a different kind of racial sequestering. They began to demand equal access to clean land, food, air, and water through lawsuits, political demands, and civil disobedience. Afton was one of the first communities of color to fight its selection as a dumping ground for garbage and toxic wastes. It certainly was the most influential. It is no exaggeration to say that the people of Afton ignited the global environmental justice movement through their civil disobedience. It was an idea whose time had come. As the state made good on its threat to jail the protesters, the sheriff's invocation of law and order was ironic. It was Afton's residents who were the victims of interstate criminal activity. The crime spree had begun in the middle of the night in late July, when Robert Burns of Jamestown, New York, drove his specially outfitted truck to North Carolina under cover of darkness. Accompanied by his 2 grown sons, he made the illicit pilgrimage to save money by surreptitiously spewing 31,000 gallons of toxic oil along Carolinian roadsides instead of disposing of it safely and legally. These midnight forays continued for 2 weeks along more than 200 miles of the state's highways. Burns left meter-wide swaths of earth contaminated with carcinogenic PCBs, dioxins, and dibenzofurans. The poisoned oil had come from the Ward Transformer Company of North Carolina, one of the nation's largest transformer repair companies. Its owner, Robert E. Ward, Jr., was Burns's business partner. When the illegal dumping was discovered, Burns was sentenced to 3 to 5 years in a North Carolina prison, and Ward was convicted of violating the Federal Toxic Substances Control Act and sentenced to 18 months in prison and fined $200,000. The state's attention quickly turned to protecting its citizens from the disease-causing chemicals, notably PCBs, which were then known to cause birth defects and liver and skin disorders, and were strongly suspected of causing cancer. Although PCB's ability to erode intellectual functioning was not yet well established, today we know that PCBs are also endocrine disruptors that profoundly damage the brains and impair the intellect of fetuses and the young, as explained in Chapter 3. We know why they picked us. Alarmed by the dire health effects posed by the 50,000 tons of soil soaked in a witch's brew of PCBs, dioxins, and other poisons, Governor James B. Hunt, Jr. militated for its disposal in predominantly African-American Warren County as the best available site. However, scientific criteria, such as the distance from groundwater or likelihood of leaching, did not support his administration's description of Warren County as the best site. "We know why they picked us," declared the Reverend Luther G. Brown, then pastor of Coley Springs Baptist Church. "It's because it's a poor county. Poor politically, poor in health, poor in education, and because it's mostly black. Nobody thought people like us would make a fuss." But Afton residents made a widely resounding clamor, and a smart one. They recruited support from neighboring sympathizers and organizations in order to do so. The Coley Springs Baptist Church, the county chapter of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, and 26 neighbors joined them in filing a lawsuit in federal district court to block the dumping of PCBs. This coalition charged that by ignoring more scientifically suitable alternative sites, EPA officials and the state of North Carolina practiced racial discrimination against the citizens of Warren County. An unsympathetic judge, W. Earl Britt, removed the last legal hurdle between Afton and the PCB dumping when he ruled against the residents, declaring from his bench, "There is not one shred of evidence that race has at any time been a motivating factor for any decision taken by any official, state, federal, or local." This is despite the fact that Title VI of the 1964 Civil Rights Act directs that no person in the United States shall, on the ground of race, color, or national origin, be excluded from participation in, be denied the benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination under any program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. Neither did the EPA protect Afton's residents. Instead, it paid $2.54 million to fund the digging up and trucking of the poisoned earth to Afton, in effect sponsoring the pollution of Afton and its environs. This time, the deadly chemicals would be dumped openly, in the light of day, and with the blessing of the state and the EPA. In response, Afton's residents and their supporters took to the streets to resist the dumping, mounting one of the longest and most widely publicized mass demonstrations and igniting the global environmental justice movement. The Washington Post described the PCB protest movement as the marriage of environmentalism with civil rights.
Context of White Supremacy. We will pick up our last audio segment. It will be the subsection Congress Takes Note. That is in Chapter 7. Congress Takes Note. That'll be our final reading on Harriet A. Washington, A Terrible Thing to Waste. Just spectacular reading. If you have thoughts, observations, questions you would like to share, the number to dial 605-313-5164. The code 564943 pound. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. Our last day reading this book, so if you have final thoughts, observations you would like to share, feel free. Number again, 605-313-5164. The code 564943 pound. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. Parenting is such hard work. I mentioned last week a listener wrote in, parent, because she has talked so much this week and even previously about breastfeeding and how these brain damaging poisons can not only disrupt your brain functioning, but can also contaminate breast milk of mothers and their ability to nourish their offspring. We had a listener, she wrote in. She said, when I was pregnant 12 years ago, I will never forget the nurse coming to my home telling me I should eat lots of fish. I was completely undone as I had just seen 2 reports that pregnant women shouldn't eat certain fish because of the mercury. I reported her because I was incensed that she would be telling black women this, causing their unborn infants harm. Years later, it found that pregnant women are now lacking the omega-3 that fish supplies, no doubt because of the former report. I know I was probably a victim because I ate little to no fish because of the report. Also, I had been a vegan for 9 months but was coerced by doctors, relatives, and various reports into eating meat when my iron levels became very low. It seems you just can't win. Pause for Michael Jackson. I thought that was so important for so many reasons. Harriet A. Washington, she said that in the book. I don't think she said you can't win, but it can be very difficult because, you know, she gave that long list. Well, these are fish to eat. These are maybe fish you want to skip. And you might have to pay attention. Where did you get this fish from? At minimum, you might have to do more research. Where did you get this fish from? Is it red algae time? Are there other pollutants? You know, it's a lot to consider in terms of what you want to eat, in terms of low iron levels and or omega-3s. She did say in the book that fish, great source of omega-3s. However, that is not the only source of omega-3s. They have lots of and again, a lot of this would come down to having to do more research. Glad we read this book, but in addition to fish, to get your omega-3s, 10 plant foods high in omega-3. You can go online and look. Many of these same items will be repeated. They have berries, meaning like blackberries, blueberries, strawberries, raspberries, hemp seeds, leafy greens, spinach and the like, kale, winter squash, acorn, butternut, beans, brassica vegetables. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, but that's like the broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, kale, cauliflower, in that family. Flax seeds, edamame, chia seeds, black walnuts. Not just any walnuts, black walnuts. But these are plant foods that are high in omega-3s. A lot of times they'll recommend either flax seeds or flaxseed oil. A lot of these items are, all of these items really, very easy to obtain, not super expensive. You would not have to break the bank to eat broccoli or Brussels sprouts or beans or squash or blueberries or flax seeds on a regular, like daily basis. That would not break the bank. And you would repeat a lot of these very same items for foods that are high in iron. Even if you were going to stay plant-based, it would be repeating a lot of the same things that I just mentioned. Green leafy vegetables, pumpkin seeds, acorn, the squash seeds in general, beans, hemp seeds, chia seeds, edamame, broccoli, green leafy vegetables. It'd be a lot of the same things. Apricots that can get your iron levels up, where you don't have to eat you don't have to eat a lot of meats and fish and things of that nature. But as I said again, it would require more research, more learning. You can get conflicting information depending on who you talk to and that sort of thing. And sometimes they don't give you all of the information, and they can pressure you. I've seen that before for black moms who they want to breastfeed. They want to have a natural childbirth. They're vegan, where they come in and try to pressure you to switch that up and do this, and have some drugs, and have some formula and that sort of thing. So you really have to research. I am not a doctor. I am not a parent. So you really have to become an authority and learn as much as you possibly can for the health, safety of yourself, your offspring. Find some trusted medical care providers and ask a lot of questions, as many questions as you can. You can go online, talk to other people, but just try to get to a point where you feel as informed, where you can make a confident choice about what you want to do and your nutrition and health needs for you and your child. But again, the big point, lots to think about if you're going to have a child. Let's get those water test strips. Get that 200, like we talked about that last week. Before we even get to the bedroom, let's get those water test strips. See what kind of water. We might not even be living somewhere to have water to have a child. That's counter-racist parenting. *61 if you have thoughts to share. I'll make sure to get the other folks who wrote in. Let's see. Folks, *61, while folks are getting their thoughts together, I will make sure I get in the other people who wrote in. We had another mom. She writes, "Hello, Gus. I hope you are doing considerably well under the circumstances. Yeah. I just wanted to thank you for the skimmed segment. That was Andrea Freeman, Suspected Racist. She was on the program talking about that book earlier this year, Breastfeeding, Chemical and Biological Warfare," I said. "I am a new attempted mother, congratulations, of a premature baby boy. I thought that by giving my son organic formula and breast milk that I was doing good with his health. With all the doctor appointments I take him to, and most of his doctors are non-white, none have told me about formula. From now on, I will give my child any formula at all. Thank you again." And I sent her a report because I thought it may have been mentioned in Skimmed or some of the other information that we read more recently, that even for premature babies, breastfeeding is great for their health. And I did find a report, several of them actually, the same thing that we just heard in A Terrible Thing to Waste. Liquid gold, it was called in Skimmed. That was the metaphor that was used. The health benefits are the same for premature babies, that it helps their immune system and they can skip a lot of the problems that some of the premature babies have who are not breastfed, that it has a lot of the same health benefits. Again, I am not a doctor, nor am I a parent, but there seems to be a lot of evidence that supports the miraculous health properties, healing properties of breast milk, that it is spectacular. I think she even said in the book, sometimes even if you may have been toxified, poisoned by the environment, the lead and the mercury and the PCBs and God knows what else, even still, it might benefit the offspring to breastfeed. Much obliged. I'll get in one more and then we'll check the phone lines again. All right, Investor, he wrote in. Final thoughts on the text. Number 1, the author recommended making baby food and canning reasonable suggestions. However, they will likely be challenging to implement in areas with non-white victims who live in so-called food deserts with limited resources. Maybe working together in order to pool resources could make such suggestions more feasible. I would agree. I have never done any canning, and I've not seen that process. I do get the impression that there is a time and energy investment to get all of the product together and canned, and I mean, I think that is a process. That's something that does take more than 5 minutes to do, and then getting all the items together, like it would seem like it, and maybe even the space to have all that. She was talking about to get the USDA the guide and the machine and everything. It seems like you might need space, time, and energy. So yeah, might not be the easiest one to implement. Pooling resources, though, that does seem like it could maybe work if you have a community center where you could have the canning resources set up and a group of people, so it doesn't have to fall on one person per se. Maybe. Number 2, the text stated your power to mitigate the harmful effects of environmental poisons is limited. This is an accurate statement in a global system of racism, white supremacy. Absolutely. Limited power. Minority power. Number 3, the section on after North Carolina and their protest against the dumping of PCBs, that's where we started that audio segment today, is an excellent example of population tailoring, population tailoring as described by Neely Fuller Jr. To me, the message is that after all their efforts to eliminate the poisons from the area, the residents ultimately failed, demonstrating the power of racist man and racist woman in the global system of racism, white supremacy. The report that we heard at the beginning was from a couple days ago. That wasn't digging through the catacombs. They were protesting in 1982. The audio report that we started on, where they were talking about, and it was not titled, that audio segment, it was titled Forever Chemicals in North Carolina. It wasn't, oh man, what are we going to do with these PCBs and how do you get rid of them in a week? It was titled Forever Chemicals. And he was talking about getting a reverse osmosis filter that cost $200 online. This is a white man, it sounded like. I could be in error. But still, this is 2020. It's so recent. Came out in 2020. They're complaining about PCBs still in North Carolina. When they take a break from complaining about the PCBs, then they get back to the hogs. Scotty Reed, North Carolina. Number 4, finally, the text characterizes the so-called civil rights activists of the 1960s as having persisted and won, and as victorious civil rights warriors. Given the continual dedication and refinement of tactics by racist man and racist woman, this may not be a constructive way of analyzing the period. Absolutely. What do we mean when we say win? Wouldn't be having the PCB problem in 1985 or 2020 if they had been victorious. Thanks for bringing this excellent text to my attention. I am sure I will be referring back to it often, myself as well. It has been a hoot. Let's see. Folks who dialed in with a hand up, line should be open. If you have thoughts, questions, feel free.
Can I be heard?
Let's see, we'll get retired.
Go ahead, Thomas.
We'll get retired.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, fine.
Oh, go ahead, firefighter. Okay. Greetings, Gus. Greetings to everyone. From the first report, it kind of like, to me, emphasized the idea of mine of couples really talking about the advent of children, plans for children, even before the two are committed. There's a lot to discuss, a lot to think about. That's what this first report is telling me about. It doesn't seem to be very complicated as far as, well, I put it this way, and I have to give credit to the author. She makes it seems like it's not really complicated, but it is a lot of things that people have to consider when it comes to themselves and offspring, as far as preparation before the process of childbirth and the aftermath, the early aftermath after the fact. It's essential to know and understand those things and kind of like be ahead of those dangers, so you'll be aware of them as you come in contact with them. I listened to the part about the what I believe was a protest. Well, something like that is taking place as we speak in Miami Gardens, and it's dealing with the owner of the Miami Dolphins in the stadium. It's the same person who has on his side the government of the local government of Miami-Dade County, which apparently has power over the city of Miami Gardens, apparently, over whether or not this Formula One racing is going to start taking place in this area. The considerate danger is the noise, the fuel, and all the different other smells and things that comes from these type of events. From my understanding, there's some sort of standstill right now as far as the vote is concerned. I haven't heard anything about any level of traditional protesting or anything. I haven't heard of it yet, although I'm sure something like that will take place because the planning is coming up pretty soon. Has already been voting on it, and that's my report on the first reading. Thank you.
Much obliged, Thomas. Retired firefighter. Now, Thomas in New York.
Thank you, Gus. Thank you, Mr. Firefighter. I'm listening to the reading as I was on public transportation, and I was just thinking, man, what a mammoth effort by white supremacists. Sometimes you just have to marvel at how proficient they are. I call them evil geniuses. They're evil, but they cross their T's, dot their I's, they spell check, they get it final edited. They don't miss a beat. I would say if white people are being honest, and there are 44 million black people in America, they have found a way to poison no less than 44 million of us. Like, they have made it so they got you anyway. Just the way you feed your kid, just, the things you eat. It's the lies they tell, just very, just proficient. In this book's, the entire reading so far, she laid out chemical warfare against black people, and she didn't even have to really mention narcotics. That's a whole nother probably 5 chapters, like just the everyday chemicals and things that we're exposed to and the lies they tell, to dump things in our areas that we reside because they put us there, and they know we have very limited resources to get out of there, and how everyone is in coercion in all of this. If the government to the corporations to the public officials, everyone. There's no way anyone is ignorant with any of this, in my opinion. Maybe the average Joe on the street, who just isn't high up on that ladder to know these things, but They got books like this out there. I doubt that they don't know. And all factual information, as far as I'm concerned, that I will use as talking points. Fish, the mercury. I mean, since March 11th, 2011, to this very moment, they've been ducking Fukushima nuclear plant in Japan. They've been dumping thousands of gallons of high-grade radiation into the ocean, picking it up and pouring it back on the nuclear lodge so it can dump right back out into the ocean. That's 9 years almost, next month. That's a long time. Not to mention, you had the BP oil spill with the oil just spewing into the Atlantic Ocean. That's Fukushima's the Pacific, the Atlantic. And as far as I know, the tap failed in 2012, and I've never seen where they fixed it. So, just how they do things. And I'll meet my line. Thank you, guys.
Much obliged, Thomas in New York. Strategically planned poisoning of non-white people worldwide. Let's see, I'll get through some of my notes here. Last week on the text, we should be moving forward, I believe, on same topic, specifically in Chicago, packing them in. Sylvia Hood, black female author, specifically about the history of environmental racism in the city of Chicago. What I found interesting is that in light of this book, or after reading this book, Packing Them In, that book starts with environmental racism. It starts at the turn of the 20th century. So they're already in Chicago, like dumping, toxins and PCBs and whatever else at like 1905, not, some newfangled thing. They've already got their plan going. Like, wow, we are choking these niggers out and all the rest of it in Chicago, like fast. And again, white people are not ignorant. If you got your environmental poison plan up and rolling, like soon as you start noticing, wow, we got a few more niggers walking around here in Chicago, something must be done about this. We'll have to warehouse them someplace, and then we'll dump poison where they live. Yeah, we'll get a commission together. Let's get a think tank together right now. Let's see, notes. Okay, from today, she started out, she was talking about fish and food and nutrition in general, and vitamins and what have you that you can take if you want to be a child, if you want to have children. And she talked about alcohol again, and some of the supplements that you can take to protect your child while they are still in utero. Omega-3s were mentioned many times. You can get that again abundantly from many plant sources. Flaxseed oil is pretty common. It's easy to find. You can have that like in your smoothie, or you can, dump a teaspoon or whatever on your salad. As I mentioned, green leafy vegetables, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, legumes, beans. Really easy to get those omega-3s from plant-based sources. The next subsection she had is breastfeeding. Consider breastfeeding, which explained in chapter 4, conveys many benefits for a child's brain as well as body, not to mention spirit. Being there with that child, it is a very different experience where you are there, you are holding that child, nursing that child, as opposed to they're just sucking on some plastic bottle or what have you. Very different bonding experience for mother and mother-daughter, mother-son, whatever it is. It's just spectacular. I would super encourage it. She continues, breastfeeding confers so many advantages to a baby's physical health and mental acuity that it is sometimes advisable even if a poison can enter breast milk. In chapter 4, I explained that the future IQ of breastfed babies was higher than normal despite the effects of the mercury in their breast milk. Liquid gold, again, was the metaphor that Andrea Freeman used in Skimmed. I asked her, white woman, is it chemical and biological warfare for whites to deliberately promote formula, anything but breastfeeding breastfeeding to black mothers, knowing all of these benefits that I just read? And she hemmed and hawed and couldn't answer. Anywho. Let's see. She has a whole section on alcohol. That moron comes on this here program all the time and says sobriety would be best under conditions of white supremacy. She says to protect any future offspring from alcohol-caused brain damage, it is safest to abstain from alcohol completely if you become pregnant, especially in light of the rate of underdiagnosed fetal alcohol brain damage in African American, First Nations, and Hispanic infants. In fact, given what she said, and hey, have we done tests to see if it impacts the sperm? If the father has been consuming alcohol a month before conception, 6 months before conception, does that impact the sperm? Does that impact child's development? Same thing for the mother. How about if we're thinking about being pregnant before we even hit the bed, well, let's get sober for a month. Let's, try to clean up our systems, get some of these poisons out of our body. That is attempted counter-racist parenting. While we're getting sober, since we're going to be drinking more water and not old Hennessy, let's get those test strips. Let's make sure we have tasty water while we're cleaning ourselves up, checking out our food, making sure we're eating correctly, we're not smoking. We get those HEPA air filters so we can have an environment for a child to develop maximally. That is attempted counter-racist parenting. Not drinking before the conception and then certainly afterwards. Next, she says, recent studies have questioned the purported health benefits of a daily serving of alcohol. They talk about that glass of red wine is so good for you. That's what they say. And many experts now think that abstaining may be healthier than moderate consumption. We got a footnote here, so I got to click that one. Footnote to go with this one. Let's see. It reads, this is for chapter 12. For chapter 7. G. Meta and N. Sharon, no safe level of alcohol consumption. Implications for global health. This is in the Journal of Hepatology 2019, and we got a link here, so I will share it. It's a PDF. I'll see if I can get it. But the report again reads, or the title of it, No Safe Level of Alcohol Consumption, Implications for Global Health. And that was hot off the presses 2019. Sobriety would be best. Let's see. Next. She recommends using minimally processed foods, allows you to control the ingredients of the food you prepare. So important. This Cows Counter-Racist Yoga Retreat, May 21 through May 24, will be in Toronto. We've already done 2 retreats, Virginia and Florida. Cooking your food is so important. That can be preparing your own food. That can be a major part of your defense against the war to pollute and poison black people. Not going to be eating, the fast foods, the processed foods, the edible items and all that nonsense, the fried chicken and whatnot, the dollar store nonsense. Not going to be doing that. Going to be getting fresh produce as much as I can. Might even grow some of my own produce if I'm able, at least a few herbs, what have you. And I'm going to be preparing my own foods. That way I can control to the best of my ability from a weak position, but I have a lot more control over trusting people. Same thing I've said for some time now. Taking that opportunity away for white people to directly put things in your mouth, directly put things on your plate. You are preparing your own foods. That way you know how much salt is in this. You have a much better idea about what preservatives are in this, how this was made, all of that. And the preservatives, she has a whole section on this. All of this is about trying to create a poison, toxin-free environment. She says avoid most preservatives, and to do that means you're going to have to doing a lot more cooking. You do more eating out, more preservatives, unless you're being picky about where you go out to eat, and you're going to be getting fresh ingredients that are not loaded up with a bunch of chemicals so that they have a really long shelf life. And now, just for example, peanut butter. I just posted I made peanut butter crumble brownies, vegan of course. My peanut butter crumble brownies, they were supposed to be swirly, but because I use peanut butter that does not have preservatives in it, you have to keep it in the refrigerator. It is substantially thicker than the normal peanut butter, so it doesn't swirl. And I noted when I looked at the recipe where other people were using the preservative-free peanut butter, they had the same problem, that it didn't swirl. It crumbled. It's a little thicker. You might have to get used, because some of the ingredients, they have so many chemicals. I said that at the yoga retreats. They have so many chemicals and things that it is a substantial change to go from, wow, this was loaded up with MSG and all this salt and all these, other chemicals, like I said, so that you can keep it on the store shelf for 6 months and it's good, as opposed to, oh, this is just food. It's not supposed to last for a month. It's supposed to have a short shelf life, or shorter than 6-8 months or a year or something, where you can just warehouse cheap food, where you have natural food. It is substantially different. It tastes different. Our taste buds literally are just oversaturated with all those chemicals and salt and MSG and sugar, high fructose corn syrup. We're just overloaded by all of that, so it totally can change even what you have a taste for, what we think of as food. Talk about impact on your brain computer. Let's see. Love how she gives a whole list of preservatives and where they're sourced from and which ones you should try to be mindful of. I appreciated when she moved to talking about canning. She talked about how you have to be very specific. She said canning must be performed meticulously in order to avoid spoilage and fatal food poisoning. Seems like you have to have a pretty rigorous code about canning. I was not surprised to see that the USDA, they had a whole canning. I think they have a machine and they have a manual with instructions and exact specifications on how it should be done. Equipment and all of that. That is code. Code. Same thing that we should be doing to eliminate racism. You have an exact code. This is how you can your peaches, your prunes, your pickles, so that you don't get botulism. This is the correct way to do it. If you don't do it this way, you could kill the whole family. Serious business. Gotta have a code. Same mindset about going to the gun range. Serious code. Same mindset about eliminating racism. I had never thought of this, and I have to start paying attention when I go to parents' residence. Maybe parents can share with us as we proceed today. She said if you have already eaten food and have concerns about its safety, call your local poison center. You should tape the number to your home's telephone or refrigerator, especially if you have children. I said, man, I don't remember. I'm a victim. My memory might be bad, but I don't remember if the poison control number was taped in the residence, or maybe somebody just had it filed away in a convenient location where they could get to it quickly. But that might be, especially if you have young children, because they can get to things really quick. I've been around, if you have those, toddlers, 2-3 years old, man, they can get to stuff quick. So yeah, that's lots. That's one thing I was not expecting. Man, it is a lot to think about. Having offspring, it is a lot to think about. Man, no more television if you're going to have offspring. Turn that television off. You got lots to think about if you're going to have children. Let's see. I appreciated how she went through some of the so-called natural supplements and what have you, and just talking about even those. It's lots to research, not just being willy-nilly and carefree and thinking, oh, I can just, eat or drink as much of this as I want, and it's no big deal. Maybe that's the case. Maybe it's not. Again, lots to research, lots to know. Talk to a qualified healthcare official. She said specifically natural is not a synonym for safe. Alternative supplements, teas, and other nostrums are often embraced by people who believe that they are natural and therefore safer than a pill or medicine that has been artificially derived in a laboratory and manufactured in a factory. But this is an illusion. Very important. Let's see. Oh, and that's the same one that she talked about, the listener said. Limited power to mitigate all this. You just try to do the best that you can. Again, test your water. That's something limited. I don't want to say that we are helpless. I don't think she's saying that in the book. I'm not saying that the same way that I'm not saying we're helpless to fight racism, white supremacy. Would be no reason in doing the program. Try to do the little things that we can, Test your water. Try not to eat out as much. I even thought today I was going to go to open up my window, and I stopped and thought. I don't live by like a, highway or freeway, anything like that, or a bus depot, thankfully. But just, it was getting close to 5 o'clock, and traffic does pick up. And she talked about that last week. Maybe you want to keep those windows closed during the daytime, because it was a pretty day here in Seattle today. It was like 55 degrees. It was, I think, a record high yesterday. It was about 58, sunny, beautiful. It felt like springtime. But I was going to go to open my window, and I paused and said, wait a minute. I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe I'll wait until after 6 o'clock. So I can go open it now. Let's see. I don't know. It's still 6 o'clock. I have to wait another hour or so and then open. But I left my HEPA filter on to try to, get the air as clean as possible. Make sure you replace your water filters, or invest maybe in a water filter if you want to check that out in your residence. Just so many things to think about, even making sure that you have a HEPA vacuum cleaner. So that it can do some of the filtering when you do the vacuum. I think that can get a lot of dust and things stirred up when you go and clean. At least I've read that in a few reports. Lots of information to process, think about going through the text, particularly if you even have an inkling of a notion that you would like to have offspring. Wow. I'll check the line again. Number 605-313-5164. The code 564943 pound. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. Again, we're all done. We have one more audio segment today, and we will complete Harriet Washington's text. Move on to a new book next week. So if you had concluding thoughts, major themes that you'll take away from the book, if you tested your water, since we talked about that last week, if you remember having the poison control number up in your residence, or if you have that number up in your residence as a parent, that would be great to know as well. I'll double check, see if other folks who are with us. Let's see, Henry in Chicago. If you have comments, questions.
Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Greetings, Gus, and greetings to all the callers and listeners. The audio segment in regards to the book talked about the dollar store. I think they titled it "Dollar Store Laissez-Faire," and it's interesting how dollar stores are popping up all over areas where non-white black people live. We always have the issue. We've been having the issue of food deserts. So their solution to the food desert is to plop a dollar store, or two, or three, or four, in a area that is populated by non-white black people. Now, what's interesting is, white people will tell you, well, dollar stores aren't expensive. You can get, what you want for a low price. And they always seem to think that just because it's cheap, it's better. They always take advantage of our, non-white black people with, considered poor or, no resources or low resources that, we have to save a buck or two. But unfortunately, and as this book is saying, dollar stores sell very toxic foods, along with cheap items as well. So it's real interesting that dollar stores are all over areas where non-white black people live at. But you go to the white neighborhoods, you may find one, and that's about it. Other than that, you'll find the major stores, the Whole Foods, everything in the white neighborhood. So I thought that's pretty interesting. I think you read a comment about doctors. I think you read a comment about a woman who was getting prenatal care by a doctor, and it's kind of confusing her in regards to eating foods and everything. And I always say this, I know you stress about, having children, being important to think about what you're going to do before you even have that child. I think it's even more important to think about what doctor you want, because sometimes these doctors, they're all about saving money for whatever hospital or insurance agency that they're working for. So I've always taken, a very serious care about who is my, practitioner, as far as like, my checkups. Now I've been having a difficult time these last 5 years because I've had to change doctors twice, because my doctors had to move out of town. My first doctor, non-white black woman, she's been my doctor for 10 years, and then she moved, and then I got another non-white black doctor, and she left the practice. So now I'm in the process of looking for a doctor now. But I think that's very, very important to have a doctor that you can trust, so they won't, mislead you on, what type of foods to eat, because, certain doctors would tell you, well, you need to eat meat or something like that. And, I'm kind of like, I've been eating meat in 8 years. So it's like, why should you be telling me to eat meat now? So, yeah, it's very important to have a doctor that you can trust to make sure that, you're at somewhat at optimal health. And particularly, a non-white black doctor who understands, what we go through, especially in the system of racism, white supremacy. It's interesting also too, you were mentioning Chicago as well, and the book that you were talking about. Now, what's so interesting is, here in Chicago, we always learn about the Great Chicago Fire that happened in the 19th century. Now, Chicago's first resident was John Baptiste de Sable, who was a non-white black male Haitian. And what was so interesting is we always learned in history that somehow in the Great Chicago Fire that kind of burnt down the city at the time in the 19th century, that fire started on the west side and it jumped the Chicago Lake or the Chicago River and basically, torched the entire city. Well, a Chicago historian had told me that when white people started moving to Chicago, they started dumping, they used the Chicago River as a dumping ground. So basically, the Chicago River was basically a waste dump. So what happened was when the Chicago Fire happened, the fire didn't jump the lake. The fire caught onto the lake and burnt the garbage in the lake, where it was able to cross the river and go into other areas. So it wasn't until white people started moving here in Chicago, they started dumping, their crap into the lake. So, we see how white people live, very, very dirty, that type of thing. So that's all I have right now. I'll mute my line.
Mm-hmm. The Windy City, indeed. Looking forward to learning. Very important city Chicago is. Looking forward to learning more about the long history of environmental racism in Chicago. Nothing new in the system. Let's see the person. Oh, Irie. If you had comment, question, you should be with us as well.
Hello, everybody. They still pollute the Chicago River purposefully, because when I was living there, I remember hearing about them dyeing it green for St. Patrick's Day, which you have to wonder what turns an entire river green, on demand. That's up to, research of the imagination, but I would imagine that it's nothing good. As far as like the products and stuff, like the homeopathic things that she read off, I'm glad that to find out about comfrey, because a friend of mine makes organic teas and so forth and so on, and like lotions that have comfrey in it. And I wonder if she knows. I was about to purchase a product. I'm going to hold off to research if it's the same toxicity on the skin as it is internal. And I'm also a little bit confused as to why Whole Foods sells the other herb she mentioned that's for smoking cessation. They sell it in little round pellets to put, for you to take subliminally. I did have a stint smoking cloves, not cigarettes, but cloves. And I was looking to quit, and I bought them, and I never took them, and I guess that was divine intervention, listening to the book. And what ended up getting me done smoking was getting a calendar, marking an X on the calendar for every day I didn't smoke, and dealing with my issues. So, yeah, I'm glad to find out that other stuff. And then somebody told me years ago, we were talking about, I was young too, we were talking about things being natural foods and stuff, and the person was like, well, just because something natural doesn't mean it's good for you. And it was a guy, I think it was actually a white guy, so it was compensatory what he said. He was like, rat poison can be natural. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, you're right. So that's also a marketing, ploy a lot of times with food or whatever product. Oh, it's natural. Well, when you think about it, everything comes from nature, ultimately. And I'll mute my line for now. Thank you.
Much obliged to Irie. They apparently have been dyeing the Chicago River green since 1962 for St. Patrick's Day. They have the Chicago Plumbers Union. I'm sure these are swell fellas and gals who love black people and have never endorsed white supremacy racism, and they probably even marched with Dr. King, some of them, way back when. But the Chicago Plumbers Union is in charge of doing... The Chicago Plumbers Union, I had to read that a couple times to even have that set in. The Chicago Plumbers Union is in charge of dyeing the river green for St. Patrick's Day, and they insist that it is environmentally friendly, and they dump 40 pounds of this dye that is family friendly, supposed to be no problems, they assure us. They dump about 40 pounds of it into the river, and it lasts, I guess, for a day or however long it lasts being green. 50 years. Or I guess now it's almost 60. Sorry, I'm 62, yeah, almost 60 years. There you go. Other folks, any other thoughts, questions before we get to the second audio segment? Grant. Everybody is satisfied. We'll go ahead and get to audio segment number 2. This will be the conclusion of the text. It has been a hoot. If you have additional comments that you did not get to share, make a note. We should have ample time. Once this section concludes, we're in Chapter 7, the conclusion. Harriet A. Washington, A Terrible Thing to Waste, Environmental Racism and Its Assault on the American Mind. Context of White Supremacy.
Congress takes note. Afton inspired more than activism by other targeted communities. It inspired the research that is essential for documenting the racial nature of such deadly exposures. Congress took notice of the protests, and the very next year, the U.S. General Accounting Office reported to the Committee on Energy and Commerce that 3 of every 4 landfills it looked at were located in the region's poorest communities. However, the GAO specifically declined to investigate race as a factor in the siting of industrial landfills, a prescient omission that helped elide the role of race in some environmental poisonings. But sociologist Robert Bullard already knew race to be a determining factor in communities he had studied, such as Houston. His 1979 study had discovered that all 5 city-owned landfills were located in black neighborhoods. Moreover, 6 out of 8 city-owned incinerators were in black neighborhoods, he recalled in a 2017 interview with the Union of Concerned Scientists. And more than 80% of the garbage dumped in the city from the 1930s up to 1978 was being dumped in black neighborhoods. Black people only made up a quarter of Houston's population at the time. Bullard set out to investigate and quantify the role of race in other parts of the nation. His meticulous assessments, while a professor at Texas Southern University in Houston, correlated census tract and other demographic information, including race, with toxic exposures. With these data, he demonstrated the determinative role of race. In 1987, a more expansive survey by the United Church of Christ Commission for Racial Justice completed an inclusive national report revealing that hazardous waste facilities in the United States are more likely to be located in predominantly minority communities such as those Bullard studied in Dallas, Texas, Alson, Louisiana, Institute, West Virginia, and Emell, Alabama, than in white areas. This overrepresentation of environmental hazards and the concomitant increased health risks were detailed in his many books, such as 1960's Dumping in Dixie, Race, Class, and Environmental Quality. Within a decade, follow-up studies verified that this racial disparity had worsened. Such data quantified a racial factor in the siting of toxic wastes that had heretofore gone undocumented, and these data are essential to crafting political public health solutions that acknowledge the engineered vulnerability of African Americans and other Americans of color. It was the organized efforts and persistence of Afton activists that drove the government interest. These were invisible problems in invisible communities until they organized themselves and started to have their own dialogue with EPA, said Vernice Miller-Travis of the Office of Environmental Justice Advisory Council. Afton's own landfill battle has not yet been won because the PCBs that were dumped in 1982 remain. But its residents put into motion a global sea change larger than the activists could have foreseen. In its 1994 Environmental Equity Draft, the EPA described Afton's PCB protests as the watershed event that led to the environmental equity movement of the 1980s. The people of Afton catalyzed the birth of a global resistance movement to free communities of color from the physical and, as we now recognize, the mental fetters of environmental poisoning. Afton's playbook still holds lessons for the sickened and endangered. In 1992, while a graduate student in Boston, I met Marianne Nelson, a Cambridge lawyer who was an executive of the Greater Boston Sierra Club. I had never before met an African American who held a leadership role in a mainstream environmental organization. Although there are now many, there then were not nearly enough. I approved of the environmental agendas of groups like the Sierra Club and the Nature Conservancy, which included protection of wild places and endangered species, preserving water and air purity, working for a clean energy future, curbing climate change, and maintaining pressure on politicians and corporations to ensure healthy communities. But for a long time, I couldn't help but think of these goals as tangential to the life and death struggles of people of color, whose very ability to breathe, think, and live a normal, healthy lifespan is directly threatened by environmental crises. Today, their interests are quite congruent, and their partnerships with communities of color seem natural alliances brokered by visionaries like Professor Robert Bullard and Dr. Aaron Mayer, who became the first African American elected as director of the Sierra Club in 2015. Conventional wisdom had long fed a misperception of African Americans as divorced from the joys and health benefits of nature. In 1969, an R.J. Reynolds Tobacco Company advertising memo advised against showing African Americans in outdoor settings. It claimed that the outdoors, hunting, skiing, sailing, is not felt to be suitable, as these are considered unfamiliar to the Negro. Today, this widespread misconception that African Americans do not seek and enjoy communing with nature persists, fed by a number of biases. The relative absence of African Americans in some national and public parks, swimming pools, and similar sites reflects not indifference, but the past violent prohibitions against their presence. Robert Bullard points out that today, a dearth of mass transit makes many such refuges inaccessible to urbanites. But as I spoke with the Sierra Club's Marianne Nelson about her work, I remembered how formative my daily interactions with nature had been as a child. I felt the days spent roaming the woods and fields of Croton-on-Hudson, Fort Dix, New Jersey, and Aschaffenburg, Germany, while learning firsthand about nature, contributed to both a lifelong appreciation of biology and a happy childhood. My friends from the Dominican Republic and Virgin Islands also wax nostalgic as they speak of growing up surrounded by natural beauty. We're now confirmed urbanites, but we agree that something has been lost in trading unspoiled nature for the streets of New York City and Chicago. Recent research shows us that this yearning for natural surroundings reflects more than sentiment. We now know that exposure to the natural world is essential to a child's health and development, and to the health of the adult she will become. A natural high. A growing body of research supports the positive connection between exposure to the natural environment in childhood and better health at all stages of life. Stress, physical, psychological, or some combination of these, is an inescapable part of life. Responses to stress can be productive, even necessary, but severe or unremitting stress can damage one's physical and mental health. Various species of racialized stress have been implicated in everything from hypertension to suicide. We most often read and hear of malignant stress arising in direct response to a stressor, such as threat or perceived threat. But this is not the only overarching theory of stress. In February 2018, a trio of researchers investigated how living within unsafe environments generates a constant stress response. Writing in the International Journal of Environmental Research and Public Health, they discuss stress-fueling features of such toxic environments, such as low social status, early, including prenatal adversity, loneliness, and lack of a natural environment. They also discuss biological mechanisms for these. Loneliness, for example, seems to drive up stress levels by chronically decreasing heart rate variability, HRV, increasing cortisol levels, and distorting immunity mechanisms. The stress caused by such factors can be curtailed, or turned off, only when safety is perceived. Exposure to the natural environment is one of many factors capable of turning off chronic stress by triggering a perception of safety. The University of Leiden, Netherlands, authors argue that within this generalized unsafety theory of stress, GUTS, the environment provides the physiological substrate for the underpinning of some things we share with most other animals: fear of the unknown. From birth, we have a low tolerance for uncertainty that results in a stress response that is always turned on, until we perceive signs of safety. Indications of safety disarm the stress response, and in so doing, they mitigate the risks of stress-related diseases like hypertension affective disorders and even obesity. The authors theorize that the prefrontal cortex, which usually suppresses brain structures such as the amygdala and neural activities that mediate the stress response, especially the amygdala, do so only when the brain has perceived safety. If safety is no longer perceived, these neurological brakes are lifted, and the amygdala reverts to high gear, quickly restoring the body to fight or flight mode. Heart activity increases, and blood pressure rises, and other stress responses resume. The prefrontal inhibition of the stress response lasts only as long as the perception of safety, which in many urban environments is rarely for long. The authors note that chronic stress may be an especially important risk for African Americans. A well-known example of membership in a discriminated minority with serious health consequences are African Americans in the United States, who have lower life expectancy than their compatriots. And it is believed that discrimination significantly contributes to this difference. The lifetime burden of perceived discrimination and discriminatory harassment and/or assault is associated with higher blood pressure, especially ambulatory and nighttime diastolic blood pressure, and higher levels of inflammatory markers. Again, since it is unlikely that these chronically enhanced physiological effects are due to actual discrimination-related stressors alone, or to continuous conscious worrying about it, it seems more likely that for many African Americans, daily life is unconsciously perceived as less safe than it is for others. Previous studies have already suggested that exposure to natural rather than urban environments reduces anxiety and feelings of sadness and normalizes heart rate, cortisol, and blood pressure even when confounding factors such as socioeconomic status, exercise levels, noise, smells, and crowding are controlled for. Even viewing pictures of unspoiled nature shows some of the physiological effects. Combating environmental poisoning is critically important. But like everyone else, African Americans, Hispanics, Asians, and Native Americans need access to untrammeled nature to optimize our mental and physical health. Over the past few decades, these two poles of the environmental movement have come together over common concerns. Mainstream environmental groups have shown their worth as powerful allies of environmental justice activists and have embraced its tenets. As early as 1994, the Sierra Club published Unequal Protection, Environmental Justice and Communities of Color, and followed this in 2005 with The Quest for Environmental Justice, Human Rights and the Politics of Pollution. In 2013, the Sierra Club gave Robert Bullard its top honor, the John Muir Award, and has established an annual award to an individual or group that has done outstanding work in the area of environmental justice. Linking arms. As Afton showed us, communities of color acting jointly, even without significant wealth or political clout, have been far more effective than any number of individuals acting alone. And just as these first organizers did, don't forget to utilize pre-existing groups if they are committed to environmental health, or if you and your neighbors can inspire them to commit. Here are steps to help you organize for the environmental health of your community. Look beyond just your friends and neighbors. Recruit your friends and neighbors, but also ask your church, sorority, or any other local groups to which you belong for their support. As noted in Chapter 6, the EPA's Guide for Community Partners, a blueprint for organizing, can be downloaded from their website. A website will help your group to share information and keep each other informed. It will also let others know what you are doing and about new issues as they arise. As a group, you will decide upon your goals for your community's health. Do you want a polluter's factory shut down? Do you want them to pay for cleanup? For testing of your children and homes? To establish a free clinic and medical bills resulting from the poisoning? To buy your homes, sparing you the burden of trying to sell tainted property? Payment for damages? All these things have been achieved by communities just like yours, but you need a goal, a plan, and expert advice. Don't be intimidated by the complexity of the work ahead of you, because professionals with expertise in community organizing, law, and devising media campaigns are ready to help you. With such help, other groups have attained their goals, and you can too. Your church, temple, or other faith community can be a powerful ally to take on the dangers and inequities of environmental poisoning in your homes and neighborhoods, just as Afton's protest was strengthened by the Coley Springs Baptist Church, and as the modern environmental racism movement was bolstered by the work of the United Church of Christ. Given the Church's pivotal role as a seat of political and moral power behind every blow to violent racism, from abolition to desegregation to health disparities and environmental racism, the faith community has repeatedly shown itself to be an inspired agent of operation. But it's not the only one. Explore whatever organization you are active in to determine whether they are also potential partners for working to end the environmental poisoning of communities of color. Your sorority or fraternity, other social organization, your union, alumni group, whatever group in which you invest your effort, time, and heart, may be interested in pursuing health and social justice for marginalized communities. You'll never know until you ask. The more you are able to tap into and mobilize existing organizations, the more efficient your efforts can become. Your group may find it helpful to read about other examples of environmental racism across the country, such as the ravaged communities described in this book. This may help you to understand the common actions and challenges, as well as the strategies that polluters have embraced to evade detection, regulation, and justice. It's important to learn that such communities are populated by middle-class as well as poor people of color, as in Anniston. That siting of such waste dumps is not always based on logical or scientific criteria, as governments claim. That environmental waste and garbage services sometimes fail to provide minimal support, as happened in Houston and Dunbar. That polluting industries or waste dumps were often imported without warning or acknowledgement of their hazards. That people are sometimes blamed by polluting industries for their deteriorating health, as the Lead Institute blamed the uneducable parents of lead-poisoned Black and Puerto Rican children, as municipal bureaucrats blamed parents of poisoned Baltimore children, and later the water customers of Flint, Michigan, for poisonings that the city engineered. Knowing this history can protect activists against succumbing to intimidation when experts intimate that poisoning woes are the fault of the victims, or that the science dictating their actions is too complex for lay people to understand. Learn where and how to report environmental violations. Go to the EPA's website. Complaints can be filed there. Hold community meetings. Post flyers throughout the neighborhood to invite everyone affected to the meetings and keep in touch by telephone or email. Write a description of the problem. You may have received health notices or read newspaper accounts of the poisoning that can help you with this. EJ Screen, the Environmental Justice Screening and Mapping tool at the EPA's website, can also be a very useful aid in characterizing and documenting the pollution problems in your community. It can also show you if neighboring communities are suffering from toxic exposures. If nearby communities have similar issues, try to join with them. Align with other environmental organizations. To find national environmental justice allies, use the map of Environmental Justice Health Alliance members who have freed themselves from environmental poisoning, often through coalitions of diverse organizations. The map is at the Environmental Justice Health Alliance website. Join with organizations such as the Sierra Club and the Nature Conservancy, which work for stronger environmental and energy laws to reduce pollution and fossil fuel dependence, to protect U.S. waterways and wildlife, and to preserve the wild. Their missions include keeping our air and water clean and replacing dirty fuel sources, ensuring a clean energy future. This makes their goals congruent with the struggles of those facing environmental racism. Seek legal counsel. Before taking legal action, I strongly suggest that your group first contact a lawyer or Earth Justice, a legal agency that holds those who break our nation's laws accountable for their actions. Finding a legal ally or advocate is the best way to learn your legal rights and to decide which specific legal steps are most likely to bring you the results you want. If your group decides to file formal complaints or to sue, the paperwork involved can be complicated. Filing the wrong form and documents, completing them incorrectly, or filing them with the wrong agency can delay your relief. For free legal help in all this, as well as help in organizing around environmental dangers, consider consulting Earth Justice, which bills itself as the nation's original and largest nonprofit environmental law organization. This legal organization is currently pursuing approximately 400 cases that focus on a variety of environmental concerns, including advising and offering free legal assistance to community groups who seek to end environmental assaults. To obtain its detailed advice for community organizing, go to their website. In order to end environmental injustice, you need to take the correct legal steps, warns Earth Justice, which offers free legal help around environmental concerns because, the group's website says, the Earth needs a good lawyer. So does your community. You can reach Earth Justice at 800-584-6460 or via email at info@earthjustice.org. Make your concerns known to your congressional lawmakers. To find out who your senators and other elected representatives are and how to contact them, go to the Earth Justice website. Take advantage of free training. Look into the 3-day environmental justice workshops conducted by the United Church of Christ. You can sign up at their website. Representatives from your group should consider attending one. Then they can take what they learn about developing community-based strategies and partnerships across ethnic and environmental interests back to your advocacy group, neighborhood, and city. Apply for grant funding. Since 1994, the Environmental Justice Small Grants Program has awarded $24 million to more than 1,400 community-based organizations. For advice and/or funds to cover your group's expenses, contact the Office of Environmental Justice, OEJ, and research environmental justice grants and resources at their website. Native American communities should contact the National Environmental Justice Advisory Council and Environmental Justice for Tribes and Indigenous Peoples at the EPA's website. Devise a media strategy. After your organization decides upon its focus and goals, develop a media strategy to make more people aware of the problem. Recruiting an experienced media professional is crucial. Try these steps. Visit the United Way's website for information on how to access volunteer media professionals. Contact Encore Talent Works at their website for access to a media consultant. Contact your local television news station to explain your community's plight. Write to your local print and online news outlets. For guidance on how to write an effective action letter, go to the earthjustice.org website. challenges still confront those working to heal the poisoned world that sickens and confounds Americans, especially people of color. The concentration of toxic industrial wastes in ethnic neighborhoods remains, maintained by the polluter's callous denialism, clothed in the scientific lingo of insufficient evidence, and joined by perennial blame the victim responses. This intellectual shrugging off of mass poisoning is paralleled by other apostles of futility, namely hereditarians, who are wedded to the notion that innate, irredeemable racial deficiency, not the slow violence of wide-scale poisoning, impairs cognitive and behavioral functioning in America's ethnic enclaves. But we know better. Problems stemming from brains injured by toxic exposures have solutions. From modest communities in Anniston, Dunbar, and Flint, to mammoth ones like Baltimore, New York, and Washington, people of color and their white supporters understand that they must force government action to banish lead, mercury, industrial waste, and air pollution from cities, fence-line communities, Native American reservations, and cancer alleys. Many have traced the history of polluting U.S. corporations and shown they find it profitable to deny responsibility for death and disease. So we can't be surprised that industries still deem the costs of testing, cleanup, and abatement too great an expense to preserve the lives, health, and minds of millions. Neither is the concentration of toxic killers and disablers among the racially marginalized shocking. It's happened too consistently to astonish us. Moreover, the EPA has reached a nadir of malign neglect, signaled by Trump's appointment of Scott Pruitt, whose avowed aim was to dismantle the EPA. The rolling back of protections continued after his departure, hobbling efforts to provide potable water and curb emissions of toxic-spewing, mercury-producing coal-fired plants, while green-lighting questionable chemicals like chlorpyrifos. There's no denying that this diminution of our already feeble environmental protection standards is discouraging. So, what's the good news? The odds seem stacked against those who militate for environmental justice. But this was precisely the case during the Civil Rights era, when activists persisted and won in the face of widespread murders and other unpunished violence, as well as in the face of hostile legal systems that protected segregation, lynching, unjust imprisonment, and marginalization. In rose-colored retrospect, it may appear as if the larger American public and news media championed civil rights workers, but many demonized them, calling for law and order. Even the beloved Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was, at the time of his death, widely derided as an immoral race baiter and communist. Yet he helped inspire the victorious civil rights warriors we now revere as heroes who saved the nation's justice system and its soul. They would not stop until they won, and neither should we. Today, activists of color and their white supporters in Flint, Anniston, Standing Rock, and smaller communities resist chemical oppression, just as the people of Afton refused to accept interstate transport of PCBs to poison their land and water. Today, the activists do not battle corporate scientists and an indifferent government entirely on their own. The research and humanity of scientists like Herbert Needleman, Robert Bullard, Philip Landrigan, and Philippe Grandjean have armed them with a true picture of how industrial and environmental poisons damage minds as well as bodies. Lawyers like Suzanne Shapiro, Evan K. Fallenberg, and Thomas Yost have held corporations and institutions accountable for damage to the minds of lead-poisoned African-American children. And today, a new generation of scientist activists of color, such as Aaron Mayer, the first African-American director of the Sierra Club, Marcia Coleman Adebayo, senior policy analyst for the EPA, and Mustafa Ali, co-founder of the EPA's Environmental Justice Program, deploy their expertise and their passion for justice in this new civil rights movement that will win clean air, land, housing, and brains unimpaired by poisons. This has been a Hachette audio production of A Terrible Thing to Waste: Environmental Racism and Its Assault on the American Mind. Written by Harriet A. Washington. Read by Ron Butler.
Context of White Supremacy. Harriet A. Washington. A Terrible Thing to Waste: Environmental Racism and Its Assault on the American Mind. Almost for a few seconds, I thought she was about to get on some sort of soapbox tirade against my president, talking about the EPA and his appointment of Scott Pruitt. Like, wait a minute, now we sat here for the last few weeks and we've had a pleasant time, informative book, and I've raved about this and medical apartheid. Now you're going to sit up here and slander my president? Like, wait a minute, hold on here. Wait a minute. Let's wrap this up without all of your politics. 4 more years. 4 more years. The number again is 605-313-5164. The code 564-943 pound. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. Grand book. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Check the footnotes. I think I said that more frequently during our reading of Medical Apartheid. Same author. But equally, check the footnotes. If you have the book, take a moment, flip through some of the footnotes. If you do not have the book, that would be a reason. This should be in your library. Medical Apartheid, without question, should be in your library. This should be there as well. Just absolutely phenomenal read. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Very proud that we were able to read it together here on the Cows. Should be in the archives, just as Medical Apartheid is in the archives. Even updated for those, if you checked at Black Talk Radio Network. The archive may not have been working for the Medical Apartheid series before, but I've almost completed getting the entire archive restored at Black Talk Radio Network for the 2016 calendar year. After that, I'll work on 2015 and 2014. But Medical Apartheid in its entirety, you should be able to go to the Black Talk Radio Network and start from episode 1 and go boop, right through to conclusion. Spectacular effort. I did mention the footnotes, both in Medical Apartheid, were amazing and filled with Cows guests. The footnotes here also have some Cows guests and some really informative reports. One of them, I made a little visit to the University of Washington Library this week and got lots of goodies. This is one of the ways that white people hide information in the system of racism. There will be lots of informative reports about racism and many other constructive topics that you will not have access to. You'll be able to see what they call the abstract, which is kind of a synopsis of what the report is about. It might be a 50-page report, and you'll be able to see the 1-paragraph summary. Once you magically step onto the campus of most of these white-dominated colleges and universities, many of these reports immediately become available. Take advantage. Visit your local university, college, library, and you can even have a little list. You can make a tab on your computer with reports that you would like to check out, and you might check online and I can't. A lot of them are available. It's 2020, so many of them are available now, but oftentimes, especially if you go through some of these footnotes for books that we read, the footnotes are not available, or the books are not, or the references are not available, once you go to that university college campus library, it is available. That was the case with this report. Tobacco and alcohol billboards in 50 Chicago neighborhoods market segmentation to sell dangerous products to the poor. Referenced in A Terrible Thing to Waste. I'm just reading the first page. This is a 19-page report. Like I said, you only get, they'll give you like a 1-paragraph summary. So it reads, in 1990, the American Lung Association of Metropolitan Chicago joined together with other health advocacy and community groups to promote legislation to ban billboard advertising of tobacco products within the city of Chicago. The impetus for this legislation came from a variety of sources. Several community groups had observed that predominantly poor and minority, should be Negro, black, African American coon neighborhoods in Chicago were inundated with billboards pushing tobacco and alcohol products. Parents and community leaders were concerned about the effect on their children of daily exposure to scores of billboards encouraging them to smoke and drink. The Chicago Reporter, a local newspaper which primarily serves the African American community, featured an expose on unlicensed billboards, political contributions, and alcohol and tobacco advertisements. The newspaper reported on a small-scale survey of billboards located on major streets in Chicago, 15 community areas. Reporters found that in poor African American, there it is, and Hispanic communities, there were both greater numbers of billboards and a higher percentage which advertised tobacco and alcohol when compared to white communities. In addition, many billboards in poverty areas were unlicensed, a violation of Chicago zoning laws. I want to read they have a footnote there. I want to read that because I don't know what that means, a billboard being unlicensed. Do you have to go like to a board? Is there supposed to be a commission that, keeps track of what billboards are there or what types of billboards? I'd like more information. At the same time, an activist priest was engaged in a high-profile campaign to deface billboards in his predominantly poor African-American parish as a way to call media attention to the problem. Subsequently, a number of Chicago City Council responded to community concern by holding hearings on proposed legislation to ban all outdoor advertising of tobacco products in Chicago. And then it goes on to give more information about this. As I said, this is about 19 pages. I already shared this information. I posted it on Facebook like yesterday or maybe even 2 days ago from this week. The entire report, I uploaded it to Dropbox, so it should be a link where you can read the report online and or download it for your own records. If you live in Chicago, this is the type of information you should probably have at your disposal. I just think it's important sometimes when talking to have most of the time I feel like I have no credibility and I'm just a coon and that sort of thing. So it can be helpful to have data and to be informed, comprehensive information about how this sort of thing is the case in many, many different areas. But I appreciate that I got this information from a book that classifies both alcohol and tobacco as a noxious, pollutant form of environmental racism and a brain-damaging toxin. I love that's how that will be filed in my brain computer from this point forward. Alcohol, tobacco, brain-damaging, noxious, environmental racism. Sobriety would be best. Anyway, that report is on my Facebook if you want to download it yourself. Folks who dialed in, *61. Again, this is our last segment on A Terrible Thing to Waste. So if you have a concluding thought, question, didn't understand something, if you did not speak during the first portion, you should definitely speak up now. Do not wait until the end of the broadcast. But if you have thoughts, questions, 605-313-5164, the code 564943 #. press *61 if you would like to participate. Henry in Chicago, Irie, retired firefighter, Thomas in New York, all with us. I'll look for other hands as well.
Hello.
Greetings, Irie.
Hello again. I was wondering what was going through the narrator's mind once he finished this book, or while he was reading the book, because he sounds like a white person. I'm pretty sure that would be interesting to query him on what his thoughts are. And nothing to do with the book. It's just something I was thinking. Clarissa Shields is a female boxer from Flint, Michigan, and when they mentioned it this last time, I remembered that I wanted to say that she dyes her, well, she doesn't dye, she braids her hair blue before every fight to bring attention to the water crisis in Flint, which leads me to this statement. There was a non-white indigenous woman in Canada that was being arrested and pursued by paramilitary and police up there because they basically they're continuing the pipeline up there, that whatever it is, pipeline in Canada. So she, willingly was arrested in protest. And she said, white people, she said, you all will never change. She said, you all will never change unless you have to. And the conclusion of the book, with Sierra Club and this one and that one, I just wonder, will they ever change, even if they have to, they kind of have to now? I'm glad people are doing what they can. I'm glad churches are stepping in. They always had to step in, especially in America, feeding the homeless and, educating children, etc. But I'm not sure anything is going to happen. We really have to just be really vigilant about everything we do and come in contact with and eat. And I'll mute my line. Thank you, everyone.
Trans-Pacific Pipeline, I believe, TPP. Global system of white supremacy racism. I believe there are many, many examples of environmental racism and whites just in general showing a lack of regard for human life, people, the planet, all of the above. They killed all the buffalo here. I think that would be another example. Lots of different illustrations. Other folks who dialed in, if you have a hand up, feel free.
Can I be heard?
A little low, but we can hear you. Thomas in New York.
Yes, sir. The book even came with legal advice. This was a very good book. I say on the book club, top 3, 5. There's quite. What book I've seen the reference the most though is that the Rising Tide of Reefs. That book I referenced the most. But this one is really good. A lot of great points, and it's just a lot about Harlem. I was telling my children and my wife as, we were going through the parks, hey, they were talking about the bus terminal right there, and, stuff that we didn't know. So I think it's up there. I see that she wrote quite a few books, though. I only was aware of, because I generally don't like reading black authors, but I was only aware of the other book that we read, which is top, one of best ever too. But I might look into some of her other works to see if she's as thorough. But I was very impressed with this book. Great choice, Gus. I like that it was up to date. I thought she was going to go into, maybe she wrote this before the UN report on Lawrence, Alabama with the hookworm. I don't think she specifically talked about that in particular place, which happens to be the birthplace of the Black Panthers. But I'll mute my line. Thank you, Gus.
Much obliged. Let's see. This book was published in 2019. So, and the book was published in 2019, but you know, she probably, at least with my understanding with books, it generally takes about a year for a book to be published. Like by the time you go through all the editing and that sort of thing, like if it was published in 2019, she probably finished the writing, I would guess, maybe 2018, maybe 2019. I think she had a few references that were from 2019, but I mean, yeah, and I think this book came out in the spring, so yeah. Anywho, if somebody gets to talk to her in a Q&A, you can maybe ask, see when exactly did she finish all of the writing for this text. Let's see. Other folks who dialed in, if you have a hand up, comment to share, proceed.
Can I be heard?
Henry in Chicago? Yes, sir.
Yes, very informative book. I agree. In regards to environmental racism. It's interesting when she was talking about in the last recording in regards to no black, non-white black people as head of, environmentalist groups, or, black people even really care about, the environment. And, she was talking about in the book how, they don't have black people, in nature, that type of thing, that, we're typically, what they call urban people or city people. But, I don't know if I can quantify that as, black people, just, being city people, because, there are black people in the South or the area of the United States that they call the South, where, they're very into nature and into, going to the forest and, enjoying the environment. But other than that, the book, like I said, the book was very informative in regards to it. A lot of medical terms I have to look up and, remember, because I know she's a medical researcher, so that's going to be a reference point for me to learn some of these medical terms. But that's all I have right now. I'll mute my line.
Much obliged, Henry in Chicago. So the UN Hookworm report, or it was in general a report on poverty, and hookworm was a symptom of that poverty. That report was from 2017. She does reference hookworm in the book, and that also being brain draining, any parasite being brain draining, particularly for young children. She references a 2017 Guardian report on extreme poverty, which is linked to that Guardian report. So she doesn't talk about it. Well, she does. She just doesn't mention the UN report like directly in the body of the text. But she talked about hookworm repeatedly, and she does mention from 2017 that UN report. Read the footnotes. Other folks dialed in. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Other folks dialed in if you have comments, questions to share. Grand, I'll share a few of my notes and check back in. Remind folks, our last time through, grand book, top 10 for sure. So I forgot from the first segment, she mentioned Margaret Mead at the beginning of chapter 7. She quoted her. She is, what do they call it, anthropologist, many other titles. She's quoted, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has." She is also an admitted white supremacist. She said so in the book Rap on Race. It's a book with she and James Baldwin, and they just talk about white supremacy, racism during the book. It was very popular, published I think in the 60s or 70s. Anyway, reading is more important than watching television. She says the U.S. General Accounting Office reported to the Committee on Energy and Commerce that 3 of every 4 landfills it looked at were located in the region's poorest communities. However, the GAO specifically declined to investigate race as a factor in the siting of industrial landfills, a prescient omission that helped elide the role of race, should be racism, but it says race, in some environmental poisonings. This is not an accident where you such flagrant evidence. 3 of every 4 landfills are where the niggers are, and you see this consistently. But we're not going to investigate racism. In fact, we're not even going to call it a race. We'll just say race or maybe bias as a factor in why all the niggers areas are poisoned. We won't even look at that. And she continues, Dr. Robert Bullard, we heard from him earlier, his 1979 study had discovered that all 5 city-owned landfills were located in black neighborhoods. Not neighborhoods, these are just areas. Moreover, 6 out of 8 city-owned incinerators were in black neighborhoods. He recalled in a 2017 interview with the Union of Concerned Scientists, and more than 80% of the garbage dumped in the city from the 1930s up to 1978 was being dumped in black neighborhoods. Black people only made up a quarter of Houston's population at the time. So, I mean, that is concentrated. It's not a quarter of the city, but we're putting almost all of the garbage dumping landfills, incinerators, or where the niggers are in Houston. Go Rockets. Deshaun Watson. Woo! And that's all by accident, right? White people are ignorant about racism, white supremacy. That's just willy-nilly, just landed that way. We weren't planning. Nobody was even paying attention. Let's see. Next, she says, before a long time, I couldn't help but think of these oh, wait a minute. She was talking about the Sierra Club and all of these groups that say they're about the environment. I was reminded, I have the book on my shelf right now, Dr. Marimba Ani from the book club, top 5 book as well, Yurugu, where she talks about this, where white people will talk about a rhetorical ethic as though they care about the buzzards, they care about the pelicans, they care about the dolphins, they care about the bison, anything. They care about the environment, where they go out and destroy and smoke cigarettes left and right, and 50 cars, and just waste plastic here all day long, McDonald's cheeseburger, and styrofoam cups, and all the rest. I mean, waste, total hypocrisy that they care about anything. Racism, white supremacy is just about practicing, maintaining white domination over everything. But that's all you can call it, that hypocrisy. She says, before a long time, I couldn't help but think of these goals as tangential to the life and death struggles of people of color whose very ability to breathe, think, and live a normal, healthy lifespan is directly threatened by environmental crises, racism. Today, their interests are quite congruent, and their partnerships with communities of color seem natural alliances brokered by visionaries like Professor Robert Bullard and Dr. Aaron Mayer, who became the first African-American elected as director of the Sierra Club in 2015. If these organizations are not saying directly, we oppose, even environmental racism. Call it what it is. This is targeted chemical, biological warfare. Call it what it is. The term she used in the book, chemical oppression, chemical terrorism. Call it what it is. It needs to be the same precise, exact, and powerful language to describe what has been targeted efforts going on for decades These incinerators didn't just pop up in all of the Negro areas last week or last year or last decade. They said this stuff, something that's going back to the book we're reading next, Environmental Racism in Chicago. It does not start in the 1930s. They start in like 1900, talking about how they were poisoning Negroes in the Windy City. Next, let's see. In 1969, an R.J. Reynolds Tobacco Company advertising memo advised against showing African Americans in outdoor settings and claimed that, all quotes, the outdoors, hunting, skiing, sailing, is not felt to be suitable, as these are considered unfamiliar to the Negro. I thought they said the Negro was a heathen and a savage and in the jungle. I thought you swing from the trees, right? That's what they said. You climb, he's a little monkey, climb the tree and get a banana. I thought that's what they said. He would thrive in the wilderness. No. Now he's just an urban rapist, looter, hangs on the corner with malt liquor and cigarettes that we have programmed him to have since birth. That's all he can do now. He can't even go out and swing from the trees anymore. We've totally ruined the Negro. But I thought, wow, it seems so reflective of Urugu and the projection, I think, Dr. Welsing. We are not comfortable seeing the Negro, thinking of the Negro. Dr. Eddie Moore Jr., Cowbell, he talked about the theory of impossibility. We're not capable of seeing the Negro as a scholar, as a doctor, as a philosopher, even as a skier, as a hiker. We can't even get that. A hunter, he's just a coon. She's just a coon. No. And this is from 1969. We just had a segment on the compensatory call-in within the last year where it was a black female. She was talking about hiking so white, basically. Same thing. Black people going out to hike is, oh my goodness. Never seen one of those. My goodness. Black people being outside and talking the exact same thing. Long history of white supremacy in the Green Book, and they bought up all of that. This, like I said, this was not 1969. This was 20, about 19, maybe 18, but I'm pretty sure it was 19. Probably be another one of these reports that comes up 2020. Let's see. Especially hunting. That means the Negro might have a rifle. We certainly are not trying to promote that in any context, even if it's to, hawk cigarettes. We got better ways of doing that anyway. Let's see. Oh, I thought this was so important. Again, counter-racist yoga retreat, May 21 through May 24. When we were at our yoga retreat in Virginia, we were on a farm. It was quiet. We were in a remote area in a rural part of Virginia. We went outside. It was so rural, away from the road and traffic and all that. We went outside and we did some target practice shooting because we weren't, safe. We could do it in a safe manner. When we were in Florida, not quite as rural, but we got to go out to a beautiful park. We did yoga out in the park. We were next to open water. It was that was the whole reason we went to Florida. We were outside in the afternoon. It was sunny. I think it was like 70 degrees or something in December. Beautiful. All of that to then say, she writes, recent research shows us that this yearning for natural surroundings reflects more than sentiment. We now know that exposure to the natural world is essential to a child's health and development and to the health of the adult she will become. And she follows that up with the subheading, A Natural High. A growing body of research supports the positive connection between exposure to the natural environment in childhood and better health at all stages of life. There are 3 footnotes just in, I think, the last 3 sentences that I read. And I highlighted one of the footnotes. One of them, the last footnote, is generalized unsafety theory of stress, unsafe environments and conditions, and the default stress response. This is a 2018 report in the International Journal of Environmental Research and Public Health. This looks like one of those reports that I was talking about that white people conceal. You don't have access to it, and then you go on a university campus, white-dominated college university, and magically, not only do you have access to it, it's free. You can download it and have it forever. You can, read it right there at your own disposal. You can have it now that you have access to it on your computer. You could just take your laptop and go sit outside and enjoy the 55-degree weather and have a latte at one of the billion Starbucks in Seattle. It's just amazing. But yeah, that'll be next on my list when I take my little trek to UW's library. Generalized unsafety theory of stress, unsafe environments and conditions, and the default stress response. But I thought this was so important, and it reminded me, Neely Fuller Jr., he said that if you look at, not that he's a rap video connoisseur, I don't think, but he said that if you look at a lot of the so-called rap videos, it's not this. It's not a natural environment. You don't see them generally out hiking, skiing, sailing, at a campfire, quiet meditation in an open field. You generally don't see that sort of thing in a hip-hop video. Maybe I'm late. I need to go see the latest Cardi B video. I might be behind on that. But he said the reason they'll show us, it'll be a lot of concrete and glass and bars and that sort of thing generally. They are preparing you for greater confinement. That's where you're going. Matter of fact, they'll have a lot of the videos, they'll be shot in prison. That's been long running over the years. Or the police will run through and somebody will be handed. It'll be very, very far from a nice, tranquil environment next to a waterfall or something, just sitting. Maybe a deer comes by, gnaws on a branch or something. It won't be that at all. And not even to make light of it, because that is huge. Like, that's such a big thing out here. REI headquarters is here as well. I think people know about all their hiking gear and everything is very popular. Their headquarters is out here. In fact, their slogan, the holidays just passed, they don't do Black Friday, Nigger Friday. They don't do that. REI, they say, I forgot they have a hashtag for it, but it's get outside and hike Friday. Don't go shop. Get outside. Go, get in the toboggan or go do some skiing or pick a trail and go do some hiking. Go get outside and breathe some fresh air, see some of nature. But that is so encouraged here. They know the value that I remember when I lived in California. We used to go running. I had a white coworker, white female, suspected racist. We would go jogging in the redwoods. Amazing. She was a California native, so she knew like all the little nooks and crannies and parks and just amazing places. But it was like redwood trees, and this is East Bay side, Oakland side, so you could see west across the bay. You could see the whole like skyline of San Francisco, and you could see the Pacific. I mean, just amazing view. And the sun, when the sun sets, all of that, it's setting behind the San Francisco skyline. And I remember she said just being outside and being able to breathe, and you could smell the pine and the trees and the different flowers, especially if you run like next month, April, the flowers are beginning to bloom, springtime, you can smell it. That has a huge impact on your body, as opposed to being in, the ghetto, the Negro side of town, anywhere. Freddie Gray's Baltimore, Chicago, New York at the bus depot, like that hits your brain computer very differently when you have to gag from all the fumes and the garbage that's piled up outside, and the emissions from the car and everything else. And if they got a factory or something nearby, or the incinerators are piled up in Niggerville and all the rest of it, as opposed to you're just out in nature. No cars, garbage dumps, quiet. You can just smell the flower. Maybe there's some fresh lavender. That has a huge impact on your body, just being able to breathe Notice the difference. She said, they have science. Matter of fact, she said just being able to see photographs of that type of environment has a constructive impact. Let's see. The prefrontal inhibition of the stress response lasts only as long as the perception of safety, which in many urban environments is rarely for long. The authors note that chronic stress may be especially important risk for African Americans. Constantly being stressed, elevating your blood pressure and deteriorating your brain. You're not able to get efficient oxygen to your brain in that state. Brain damage, very important. Just getting out in nature. I say that all the time. I say yoga or go hiking. Find a trail, especially now that it's getting warmer. It was 55 degrees here today, 58 yesterday. I got outside both days. Got outside, I think, every day this week. You can start to get outside a little bit, or a lot maybe. Let's see. Other folks have any other comments they want to make sure they get in as we creep on the conclusion of the text?
Hello?
Irie in Louisiana.
Yeah, I'm when she was talking about going outside and black people not being outside, the other day I heard that, well, I'll say this. Years ago, I was thinking about putting my son in Boy Scouts so he could get outside, you know, all that stuff, learn nature, X, Y, Z. And then I was like, you know, I don't know if that's going to be a good idea because I'm pretty sure, you know, there's some type of something not right going on, all these grown men and boys. And sure enough, they're going bankrupt. They filed bankruptcy because of all the payouts they have to do for sexual abuse. And you know, it just makes you think like, yeah, some black people, if they don't have the money to buy equipment or, you know, whatever, if they're not able to go out on their own, no, a lot of black people aren't going to be outside because look at me. I had reservations because I was afraid my son could be abused, you know, while I wanted him to get some exposure to nature. And then you have other instances if you're out and you're camping or you're hunting or whatever and you're black, who knows what can happen if you come across racist suspects, you know, while you're doing your thing in nature. And I think it just really discourages, you know, non-white people to want to take advantage of it at times. And that was the last thing I wanted to share. But thanks again for the book. I'm going to get the book and copy pages out of it for when I don't have anything like lesson plans. We can read excerpts from this. Thanks.
It's filled with a lot of great information, in my opinion. Definitely worth sharing. And I think it was retired firefighter, unless I'm mistaken, he mentioned earlier about it. She makes it, you don't have to have like a PhD to understand the material that she's written in the book. Like, I think she makes it so that you can read it without having an extensive, you know, science background, without having an extensive background in what they call environmental justice. Like, you can come to it totally unfamiliar with those concepts, and she can make it so that she explains it so that you can understand it, I think. So I think children would be able to get this. And they probably, this is the era of Greta Thunberg, so they probably, you know, they're ready to roll. They probably know a lot of these concepts already. But absolutely, long history of them terrorizing black people and keeping us from being able to be outside safely and enjoy all the wonderful benefits of nature, as they call it. Let's see. Oh, make sure I get in quickly. I'll double check. Irie in Cancer Alley, she said, air pollution from cities, fence line communities, Native American reservations, and cancer alleys. She has cancer alleys, plural, not just the one in Louisiana, but many, many times over. Next, she says, oh yeah, we talked about this before. I'm just going to read it as it says. She was talking about Dr. King and the connection to environmental activism now. And talking about Dr. King, she said, yet he helped inspire the victorious civil rights warriors we now revere as heroes who saved the nation's justice system and its soul. They would not stop until they won. Neither should we. Today, activists of color and their white supporters in Flint, Anniston, Standing Rock, blah, blah, blah. Many things, just in that little short snippet there. It's only a sentence or two. That word warrior, I think, is a metaphor every time. I just attempted counter-racist, victims of racism. I think those would be better terms. Warrior has so many different connotations. Warriors in many respects are often killers. So, certainly you can say that someone is a combatant or what have you, and maybe they're not necessarily killing, but warriors are killers. And the root of warriors is war. I think we've said consistently, the only folks who are waging war are classified as white. Just something about that word warrior. I generally don't see it used in a constructive or accurate manner in counter-racist conversation. She says, yet he, talking about Dr. King, helps inspire the victorious civil rights warriors. Victorious, we talked about that before. If they were quote-unquote victorious, we wouldn't have a problem of environmental racism. The problem would have been solved. They were not victorious. But she says, yet he helped inspire the victorious civil rights warriors we now revere as heroes who saved the nation's justice system. Saved the nation's justice system and its soul. That is a metaphor. I've talked about metaphors before. I don't know what that means. I am not sure how Dr. King or any other non-white person victim of racism, quote unquote, saved the nation's justice system. You mean the nation's justice system that made the Brown v. Board of Education decision, all deliberate speed? That justice system? What are you talking about exactly? That produced Richard Nixon, president, 68, and him being able to appoint Supreme Court justices who've had a reverberating effect for decades? That justice system? That's what you're talking about? She continues, they would not stop until they won, and neither should we. I get, wanting to inspire people that this is a serious problem, everything she's talked about in the book, but again, they didn't win. And doubling down to emphasize that they won when they so clearly did not. And some of them have said that we did not. If we had, we wouldn't have these problems. Even if you take the position that they made, progress, fine. But that is not what they were looking for, was making, a little things slightly better. I think they wanted eradication of the problem. And it certainly wouldn't be considered a victory if they're talking about things like school segregation, which is, a part of what she mentioned here with environmental racism. It wouldn't be that school segregation is worse 60 years later at the time of this book's publication. That certainly couldn't be declared as a victory. Next. Just the sentence, activists of color and their white supporters, it always rubs me wrong, seems suspect. She mentioned that about Flint. People mentioned that about Ferguson. Yeah. Anyway, I do love chemical oppression. I think that is, now we're talking. Now we're being accurate about the problem, chemical and biological warfare, chemical oppression, white chemical oppression, all of that. Accurate description of the problem. Top 10 book. Anything? Final comment folks need to get in before we wrap things up?
Can I be heard?
Hi, could I be heard?
We'll get Victor first. Did you have a quick comment, question, sir?
Oh yes. As I was listening to the narrator, I was thinking about how racism is really global, and if we as non-white people are sometimes trapped in political, economic limitations when seeking information or seeking justice about specific environmental racism. I have heard of scientific racism, but I personally have never heard of environmental racism. I didn't make the connection between the black ghettos or places where there's no growing grass, there's a lot of concrete, There's a lot of pollution. I never made the connection in my mind that could be actually the environmental racism. So hearing the book has opened my eyes up to the different forms of manifestations of white supremacy. So that was something that I never thought about. That it also brought me back to when I was a kid. I used to go to a creek and I'd be able to get a frog and I'd see living things. Now everything is dead. And I actually do go to parks and meditate, and usually it's just me only. I rarely ever see any black people. They may be walking around, but they're not, I don't really see them at the park that often unless there's a barbecue or something. So that was just my my observation. I'll just mute my line.
Much obliged, Victor. Thank you for your patience. Retired firefighter.
Yes. Once again, I commend the author on her book. As I mentioned before, it's not, the information is not complicated based on how she explains it, and she offers a lot of suggestions that can practically be done by an individual. She also even gives suggestions of something that requires multiple people to engage in, and she gives a how to do in that light. So that's something that's is very practical and very, very. That's what makes it a good book. One thing I noticed about listening to the second session also is it reminds me of how I think about things, on how shrewdly the global system of racial white supremacy have moved us out of the areas of nature, because most of us have to be compensated with some sort of employment that is not going to place us in those areas. It's going to place us in areas that are called inner city, something of that nature, as opposed to out in an area where there's a lot of constructive nature. It's just too far away. I'll put it that way. And the races have developed, quote unquote, so much of nature itself, and the part that they don't, they place restrictions on who is allowed to reside in those areas, and in most cases, the price to be able to do that, it goes beyond most non-white people in itself. But one could plan with groups and whatnot to be able to go to those areas for certain periods of time to get a experience in those type of areas. Back to last but not least, back to the first reading. I was listening to the part with the storage of what do you call it when they put the fruits in the jars,
canning,
and how it. Yes, and how dangerous that is. I am one generation removed from the people who actually did that on a daily basis, and I can recall as a younger person that the jars would come from the rural parts of Georgia, and we would just eat what was in them, without even no thoughts about what she is talking about, which I believe it. I believe she's correct that it is could be poisonous, but there's so much that we have lost from not being in proximity to a rural areas. That white supremacy. That's the only thing comes to my mind, as far as they're concerned. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Much obliged, retired firefighter. Just for folks who, in case we have anybody out there who does any canning, it was more so that it's meticulous. That was the word that she used. You have to be meticulous about it, because if you do it incorrectly, definitely it can be fatal. She said botulism doesn't take but a little bit, but obviously, I mean, as he said, you're only a generation removed, and I think a lot of people participate in the canning, so absolutely something that you can do. Just you have to be codified in how you do it. And also, Ron Butler, the narrator, is a non-white male, black male. Mr. Butler, he narrated this book. He also narrated Medical Apartheid, the first book that we read of Harriet A. Washington. He narrated The Half Has Never Been Told. I think something else, because we've read so many books over the years, but at least 3. But he is a non-white male. I think the question was asked, how did a white male feel reading this book? Don't know, because Ron Butler is not a white male.
Pardon that.
Not, we all are still learning, trying our best. With that, we will be shoving off to a new book next week. A little sad. Oh well. Always more constructive books. Lots and lots and lots of books. So more to come. Next week, packing them in. Sylvia Hood, Chicago specifically. Environmental racism continues. We'll be here tomorrow for workplace racism. 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Normal broadcast time. Look forward to tuning in, hearing how folks have gotten through Black History Month on the job. With that, much obliged for folks tuning in. Hopefully it has been a great read. Get this book in your library. How could I not get it in at the end? Again, sobriety would be best under conditions of white supremacy. In addition to being sober, every time you are in a vehicle, driver or passenger, be buckled up. If you are driving, you are sober, you are buckled, and you are not on the cell phone. Doing everything that we can to minimize contact with race soldiers, badge or no. That said, Creator, we ask that you help us remain patient with other black people, victims of white supremacy. We ask that you help us remain patient with ourselves. Remind us to demonstrate the highest levels of black self-respect at all times, in all places, each and every time we are in contact with another black person. It has been time. Replace white supremacy with justice immediately. Cow signing out. Thanks all for tuning in. Remember, test your water. Lots to think about before conceiving a child.